I'll hold the recording until we.
You're recording. I can't hear you. Teresa, I can't hear you guys, but I can see you fine. Is your microphone on? Can't hear a word you're saying.
With the red on.
Or by means of communication equipment
You're
to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person and through the Zoom meeting platform, being broadcast from Borough Hall at 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participants for this regular council meeting of September 27, 2021 is available by call-in phone number or through web conferencing Zoom platform. Members of the public will be on mute until it is time for questions and comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to ask questions and comment by phone or through Zoom by using the raised hand button, and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of the meeting was included in the schedule of meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2021-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, Two River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 7th, 2021, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to include this statement in the minutes of the meeting. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Christopher Keith. Here. Hodge. Here. McKee. Here. McHugh.
Here.
Neff. Here. Rodriguez.
Here.
And Administrator Casagrande, Attorney Buchanan, Engineer Gardella, and Sergeant Schneider are as well.
Before we move to a presentation by the Green Team, I just wanted to mention that we have in receipt of a letter from the Fairhaven Republicans dated September 27th, 2021, with three candidates to fill the mayoral seat, which was resigned by Mayor Lucarelli after the last meeting. We will take this up in the next session. Okay, so we'll move on to presentation by the Green Team. Mike.
Okay, thank you, Council President. So just a heads up for the public and for our fellow governing body members. Back in the spring, Ms. Flanagan and I submitted an application for a grant through Sustainable New Jersey for a environmental defense fellow. And what this person does, generally they energy audits of the town, and they are specialized in sustainable New Jersey practices, grant applications, things like that. It's generally for towns that aren't doing new construction. It's supposed to be for existing buildings and how to make existing buildings more efficient. We were open and honest and said, hey, we're doing a big overhaul of our buildings in our town, and we thought, maybe that they could, just provide us with more information, a different perspective on how to go forward with that. Luckily, we were one of the towns that was accepted, and just FYI, the Fairhaven School Board also applied for this grant. So we were really lucky and special circumstance to have the same fellow working with us, the town, and the Board of Education. So there's a lot of communication going back and forth with that. With that being said, she worked really hard. She's very smart. Columbia Master's Program. And she got right to work, coordinating with the administrator, DJ Breckenridge, Kelly and I, weekly meetings, energy tracking. She went back and basically got at least a year's history on all the government, the borough-owned buildings. And then, went through this formula to figure out our Energy Star rating. So, we have some concrete data to say, okay, this is what our energy efficiency number is for this building. This is how many BTUs we consume on average throughout the year, how much electricity we consume throughout the year. So moving forward, especially with the new buildings being more energy efficient, we can quantify that to the residents, say this is how much money, not only are we helping the environment, but we're also saving money. So we have these hard numbers on that. We did a lot of, she really just helped us as the green team, build a really strong foundation moving forward. We implemented an energy tracking and management system. So that's to continue the data that she went back to 12 months or 14 months. And track that, and then we'll continuously track that, and then we'll be able to have that quantified number of how much money we're spending on our energy. And again, this was a lot of coordination between DJ and JCP&L, New Jersey Natural Gas, and our third-party suppliers. She got to work on that. We looked into various grants going forward. And so it's just a really good benchmark, but she also gave us some guidance going forward. Perhaps, also as a liaison to the facilities committee, like I was saying earlier, it's generally for buildings just to get retrofitted, not new construction, but she did dig up and find some programs that can help us going forward with new buildings. And in the short term implementation, she made a few suggestions. Direct install programs where our builders can work with New Jersey Natural Gas and JCP&L and get up to 25 to 35% rebates on furnaces, on energy related products. So it's a pretty substantial number to get back for all brand new buildings. And Kelly, if you want to jump in, I think the school did this already and they pretty much, feel free to correct me, but I think they got like a boiler essentially for free to cover the school building.
Sure, so thank you for allowing us.
Can you just please step up to the microphone? Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having the green team here in front of you guys. As Mike was saying, Karen worked, we were fortunate to have this great opportunity through Sustainable Jersey to pay for essentially this fellow to work for us for about 10 weeks, helping us with our energy tracking and management in town. Now, those of you that aren't familiar with Sustainable Jersey, it is an organization, statewide organization that helps to facilitate, offer financial incentives to towns and to help to any initiatives, sustainable initiatives that those municipalities want to undertake. Well, currently Fairhaven is bronze certified at 150 points. We would love to get to the next level of silver certification. In order to do that, we need to get another 200 points. We also need another priority action. This energy tracking and management that she did for us is a priority action. It also awards us 20 points. But not only that, as Mike said, it gives us this benchmark of where we are currently with the energy usage of our borough buildings. So if you can see, and I apologize for the public, I don't have access to this, but I will put this on the Environmental Commission website as well. But our Energy Star performance for the Department of Public Works and our police department, we're least energy efficient, receiving a score of 35 and a score of 67. What that means is how do those buildings compare with other buildings comparable in size, date created, usage, etc., around across the nation. So great that you guys have took that initiative to get new construction for these two buildings because they are doing so poorly. Now for Borough Hall, which is 81%, that's an okay score, but we can do better, right? It's if you get that on a test, you can study hard, try to get that raised up the next time. So what she is offering is where do we go from here? And I think this is create, as Mike said, a great base point of where we are currently, but how can we improve our energy efficiency? And so one way she did bring in representatives from New Jersey Natural Gas to the next step could be an audit of Borough Hall to see what would make sense. There are some incentives through state that can get you, as Mike said, that can give you rebates, that can give you energy savings, you know, here. But this was a great thing. We also, she was great. We want to give a big thanks to Chrissy Larson, who stepped up with, she was trained to be able to continue this energy tracking and management so that every month we will continue to upload these utility bills, see where we are even throughout the next few months, the next year, et cetera, and to have this baseline data information. In addition, another priority action she helped us with, and DJ was critical in providing this information, was a fleet inventory on where we are with the, our borough's fleets, you know, how fuel efficient is it? And it's not only good data to have to see where we stand, but I think it also informs purchasing power, right? So where can we save money, but also reduce our carbon footprint? What fleets or vehicles, you know, can be, or the next one that makes more sense to replace. So these are some of the incentives. And the purpose of being in front of you guys is not only to highlight some of this work that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to get to, but to see where might our priorities be in the next 3 to 6 months, the next, you know, 6 months to a year, and where we can go from there. As Mike was saying before, even though there are not points we can get awarded from, but there are new construction initiatives that he will bring definitely to facilities that can repay 25 to 35% of new equipment costs. The architect or contractor should be aware of this. It's simple paperwork, but there are lots of incentives like this. Another possibility is this grant that we hope to apply for with Sustainable Jersey called the Gardener Grant. Unfortunately, it's due quickly in November, but it's for energy initiatives to help, you know, some energy products. Perhaps we'd like to talk with some of you or a few of you about possibilities of applying for this for Bicentennial Hall or Borough Hall. How we can help to improve the energy efficiency of town, also while, you know, helping the environment, but saving money as well. And the presentation, the final presentation is already uploaded to the Environmental Commission website, so you can take a look at it. There's some great data and information that she compiled for us. We will also put this as well, this little summary sheet of her recommendations for the next step, and you know, for just to summarize the work that she did.
Yeah, and the last thing, one other recommendation, because she was working with the school, she said we might want to start or continue that open line of communication because the school is looking to mount solar on one or both of the schools, and if we jump in with the economy of scale, maybe we could, you know, get a less price per foot or whatever per panel if we go in with them. So just keeping the communication open with our Board of Education counterparts, and moving forward with different types of grants. But yeah, she definitely worked very hard. She's very smart. And you know, not all grants are just money, just having somebody, just some subject matter expert to help us and educate Kelly and I, and even Ralph tried it in a couple of times. Between Kelly, Karen and Ralph, I think there was what, 6 Columbia degrees or something like that in the meetings.
But
Definitely the low man on the totem pole, but happy to bring everybody in on this.
but it was well worth it, and you know, also just so that it doesn't get lost in our file on Google Drive, but where we can actually utilize some of this and, you know, just help inform, maybe better inform, make smarter decisions moving forward. So we definitely, for the green team, we thank you for allowing us an opportunity to speak to you guys about this, and we'll be happy to talk more about it. We have a ton of information as well about some of these priority actions that Sustainable Jersey really highlights once you get this, we already have the energy tracking management, once we get fleet inventory, then we can get our municipal carbon footprint, which is, helps to kind of, what's the long-term goal for Fairhaven? Like, are we trying to reduce our carbon output? Are we trying to, where do we want to see these buildings energy efficiency and these ratings? How much do we want to see them increase? Where can we do better with upgrading? So, I do thank you for this, and I found that this experience was very valuable and helpful to our volunteers on the committee.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we allowed to ask a couple questions?
Sure. Would you like to ask a question?
Uh,
Or do you
if I
want to make a
may.
statement? Sure.
On the Gardener grant, which is due November 5th, is that realistic at all for us to even entertain it? In the green team meeting, the team felt that where we might be able to apply it would be to Bicentennial Hall, because it might be a construction, a renovation project that is a little bit quicker than DPW and the police station. And the issue with it is that it's an energy related grant. It's anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000, which is a reasonable amount. But the team felt that because Bicentennial Hall is a historical building and the uniqueness of that building, that perhaps combining its historical nature and our desire to make it more energy efficient could provide something interesting that might increase our chances of actually getting that grant. So I just thought I would mention that. I already mentioned that with a few of you earlier, but I just wanted to mention to the whole council, because one question I have is it essentially too late, or do we think we can entertain this at all in the next few weeks? Or is there enough of energy efficiency projects in the Bicentennial Hall renovation that we are envisioning right now, or not? Because if not, then it doesn't apply.
I would say, just because I'm in all the facilities meetings, first it would probably be pretty tight, just to be totally honest, given everything else that's going on with the other buildings. Also, I don't know that we're doing a heck of a lot on the energy efficiency front. We're trying to make it more redundant by utilizing the generator from the police station, ultimately bringing that over, but that is really energy backup. It's not energy efficient. And I think most of what we're doing is really making it more functional, with bathrooms and with ADA, so that people can meet and utilize the building. So I don't know that there's going to be any changes to the windows, which are inefficient, but they're historic. I don't know that we're going to take the walls down and fill them with foam or anything like that. So I'm just picking a few things, and I don't know that we'll put solar panels on or anything of that sort. So yeah.
Does the historical nature of the building preclude you from doing some of those initiatives?
So that's actually a question I asked. Kelly,
Can
could
you
you,
repeat the question? I apologize.
does the historic, I'm sorry.
No, my question is, does the historic nature of the building preclude it from having some of these energy efficient initiatives?
So, forget who we spoke to, but she,
Right, we spoke to Nancy Quirk, who is
Nancy Quirk.
administrator of San Jersey, whose background is in historical buildings as well. And she met with Mike and I and DJ and our fellow Karen.
Could you come up front so everybody can hear you? Thank you.
And the thing about this Gardener brand is that it needs to be just not ordinary energy efficient. It kind of have to be outside the box, a little bit creative, right? And she felt that Bicentennial Hall would be a great, because just the story of it and the historical nature of it, and to be able to kind of retrofit this historical building to make it as energy efficient as new construction would be today. If you look too on your thing, don't be, alarmed or confused. You might look there and say, well, it's got an Energy Star rating of 94. It's already doing pretty good. What do we have to do with it? Just remember that this is just the last 2 years worth of data. This was during pandemic. Nobody used Bicentennial Hall. The lights weren't on, the heat wasn't on, and so this is not an accurate picture of what the energy efficiency is in Bi Hall. And so that's why it's so important to continue to manage this, our energy tracking, and to see how that might be better, truer picture of where it is. Now, there is a lot of stuff you can do that's doesn't cost a lot to retrofit bicentennial hall. I mean, you could add insulation to an attic, which doesn't change the appearance of a historical building. You can
So we can see if we can figure out how that works. Filing a grant application in full by November 3rd, or the date, I'm not sure what the date is, would be difficult. But it sounds like it's actually not as difficult, and it's more of a concept as opposed to a fully vetted grant application. Okay, great.
So,
I'm sorry, point of order.
Sure.
Could you send the resident's name and address for the clerk?
Oh,
Forgive me.
Sorry.
I'm sure it will be.
Sarah Betty, 27 Kidney Terrace.
Just a piggyback question on, so the grant application has Sarah, it sounds like you looked at it. Okay, so it's not, is it something that between now and November would be something that could be accomplished for the borough to apply for?
In the last part.
Is it something, is it a heavy lift, or is it something that we'd be able to pursue?
It's something we'd be able to pursue, and we're working on the application with
Okay.
the team, not resources.
I think
We're not
everything,
asking you guys to do anything other than understand like what the potential things we could apply for would be. And then I'll have to look up the technical term that they ask for. There's basically like a permission slip from the town. that says, like, we're not just doing this without any.
Got it. Okay, so then would the plan be for the green team to report back?
but if I may, I think we would have as a borough to spell out some idea of what that would be, and I think that would come to the facilities committee. That's
Yeah.
why we would need some kind of idea that we would be able to express
Yeah.
as to how we would use it.
okay.
Okay. Great.
I have just one more, if I may, on the solar panels. Do you know the time frame for the school to potentially put on the solar panels? And I'm just wondering, I know that we looked at solar panels potentially for DPW, but that's further down the road. Are we at some point going to renovate Borough Hall, or what is the condition of the roof at Borough Hall if we were ever to consider that as far as solar panels? Is that something that it's not in condition for us to even consider?
I'm not sure about Borough Tracy, but I know our heating HVAC system is only 10, 12 years
Less than
old.
10 years.
Less than 10 years old, so the heating air conditioning is not old, I'm not
Same with
sure.
Bicentennial Hall, it's only about
Right.
5, maybe, Rich?
Those two, that's why maybe a little bit higher on the energy score, because they've been renovated the past 10 or 12 years, but the roof status, I'm not sure.
I was thinking more just as far as solar panels, because I'm just not familiar with whether there were any plans for Borough Hall or whether the roof at Borough Hall is already beyond its useful life. And whether that's anything that we should think about.
Yeah, I would take
When
that
this topic of
offline.
solar
I
panels.
think that's a good idea, but I don't want to try to crack that open right now.
Okay.
Also want to point out on Bicentennial Hall, the timing of that project, is going to be tied to the CDBG grant, which we just applied for. So we won't get that information, on the successfulness of that grant until probably close to year end, and then we have to wait for it to be funded by HUD before we actually get the dollar amount. So, that project would stay in the queue until we get that information, and then from when we get if we are successful and we get notified that the funds have been funded by HUD, then we'd have a year to get that portion of the project off.
So let's see if we can just tie up the timelines and see if it's worth trying to make an effort on it. And if we can't, we'll go for it next year. But I just want to say thank you to the green team for making the presentation and staying after it and providing us with great opportunities to get grants back in town for worthy projects. Okay, moving to workshop, we're gonna have a quick 5 or 10 minute briefing from our borough attorney on Robert's Rules of Order. Right?
Sure. So thank you, Council President, and that's what the administrator earlier talked about how we run the meeting, obviously, in like last week's meeting or 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, generally what you guys have been doing tonight, Robert's, let's put it this way, there's 20 people in the room, right? We're all here to talk about public business and basically the same thing. So that has to be ordered in some way. The council meeting is already generally ordered in conjunction with Robert's Rules of Order. So you have motions and seconds, but generally speaking, there's only discussion when there's a motion, right? So if the motion is on something and the motion's on to speak for a presentation, you stay topical to that issue. That's the number one rule of Robert's order, to order the discussion, right? Regardless of who's talking or saying anything, it's important that the discussion pertains to the motion and the question at hand. Otherwise, it becomes disorganized. So organization is the key to success in Robert's rules. So Councilwoman Neff just demonstrated a little earlier the most important component of Robert's rules, because honestly, we could talk over here all night, but when people are talking at the same time, then it becomes a problem, right? So there's only 2 times you really interrupt the chair of the meeting, right? The chair is in charge of the meeting, council president, or the mayor, and they have to recognize you to speak, whether you're from the public or you're up on the dais. The only 2 times really that you can interrupt that is a point of order or a point of information, where I have a question for the speaker, and ask a question, or I have a point of objection. We shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing that. The room's too hot, whatever, something like that. That's a point of order. And that's the only time we really interrupt the person speaking, whether it's the person at the microphone because we can't hear them, and it's a point of order, I can't hear the speaker, or the room's too hot. Beyond that, really have to recognize that the chair to speak. And there,
Who can call a point of order?
any member of the assembly, so on the dais. So the public in this setting, as I said, Robert's Rules of Order are parliamentary procedure, and how the legislature, the parliamentary body governs itself. The addition of public comment is fairly simple. There should be the members of the public only have the right to speak when they're connected, right? For their allotted time or whatever reasonable restrictions you put on that. But the most important thing to remember is, and Councilwoman Neff just demonstrated it before, I think she had another question for Councilman McHugh on the presentation I just given. She said, if I may, she's a functional equivalent of saying point of order. As long as we stick to that, I think we'll be okay. And then civility rules, obviously. You don't need all these rules of organization if everyone's being respectful to each other, of course. So I have a 5-page kind of like cheat sheet, it's actually called, literally a cheat sheet from the internet, on the basic rules of the Robert's Rules if you're interested to read through them. But generally speaking, the chair decides the points of order, decides the points of information. And then beyond that, it's really just discussion pertaining to whatever motion or public comment or issue is raised. And you guys are doing a good job tonight, so I have confidence that will be all right.
Any questions from the council?
Yes. Similar to this conversation, is there ever an opportunity that the council meets without any professionals in the room?
You could do that, yeah.
I'm just thinking if there's ever a time that we needed to discuss something that,
Well, so the most important thing to remember about Robert's Rules is you guys are in charge, right? So the majority of you, whatever you decide, right? So we come in here and you want to talk about something that's on the agenda. Well, if you can get 4 people up there to vote for that, then that's what we're gonna do, right? So that's the most important thing. If you guys want to have a meeting that doesn't include the professionals, so the only person that must be present at all meetings is the clerk by
Okay.
statute, because she takes the minutes
Yep.
and is statutorily obligated to be there. But beyond that, you guys can have a meeting with just the clerk if you'd like.
Perfect. Okay.
But honestly, you can do virtually whatever you like within the boundaries of the law. I'm here to just set the guardrails, obviously from this table.
Yep.
And then it's up to you, it's your meeting. That's the important thing to remember. It's the council and the governing body's meeting.
Based on the structure of the Robert's rules and so forth. Okay.
Right, and the
great.
Roberts rules provide all of you individually with the ability to say, I move to include this on the agenda tonight. You know, Mr. Chair or Mrs. Chair, can I be recognized? I'd like to put this on the agenda tonight. You get 4 people to vote, but that's what we're doing.
Great.
You know, it's important to remember it's your meeting, right? It's not anyone else. It's not our meeting, it's your meeting.
But we also have to operate the rules under the Sunshine Act, which means that there has to be public notice, and if we go into executive session and it's just us and we don't want anybody else in the room to do that, but you have to actually notice the public, go into
Correct.
public session, adjourn into executive session, and then back into public session.
And that's all public notice.
Correct.
2 weeks, right?
72 hours?
Oh,
48.
yeah,
Close.
okay.
If a majority of the body wants to discuss public business,
Mhm.
then it has to be asked.
Yep.
That's the only rule overlay.
Great, thank you, helpful, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, so we'll move on to, thank you for that briefing. That was helpful. Borough sidewalk considerations. And I believe this is going to be around the Oak Lawn concept. Rich, I think you're going to brief on this. Is that right?
Actually, Council President, we could tie 2 and 3 together. I provided the Borough Council members with the multiple spreadsheets for this discussion.
Okay.
And really what it comes down to is the first one, of course, has all your road projects and potential sidewalk projects and what their status is currently. And as that relates to the fact that we're beginning discussion on the 2021 capital bond ordinance, the governing body looking to move forward with that this year. And there will be a decision to be made on each one of these areas that are in the spreadsheet for the capital bond ordinance. I just filled in the placeholders and commentaries based on information I've gathered from various sources. But you'll see in that there is a section for when it comes to roads in general. There's a section for 3rd Street Phase 1, which would be what I would call a road project by name because it's tied to a grant, so it would be called out specifically in your bond ordinance. And then I put a placeholder in there for both annual curb and sidewalk maintenance, and I put a placeholder in there also for drainage improvements, both of which the governing body can decide on what they want to prioritize, and certainly with Rich's input and looking at what you already have and how much you want to allocate to those projects. In the past, the governing body has done it both ways. We've either allocated so much in a given year. You'll see the last time we allocated money for general curbs and sidewalk projects was $500,000 in 2018. And then in 2020, we did add additional monies for drainage and for specific roads and sidewalks. When I first came here, the governing body at the time, they were actually issuing bonds and they had put $2 million out for roads and sidewalks repair. And then what they did from there was they drove down from that they already authorized. So it's really up to you to make a decision on what you want to prioritize when it comes to sidewalks and roads and how much you want to spend on the various projects, noting what I've mentioned before as far as what's already in queue, what's already been authorized, and what you'll contemplate authorizing in 2021 if you move forward with bond ordinance. The other spreadsheet I provided you was kind of timely for this evening, and I provided it last meeting too, because you do have the adoption of 2021-12 on tonight's agenda, which is what we call our budgeted capital ordinance that we annually put $215,000 in our budget. Moving that into a bond ordinance allows the governing body to charge against that for what I would term smaller capital improvements that we don't want to issue debt for. And you'll see what we've done since 2014 by department and by price for the various things that the governing body subsequently approves. Just because you approve this bond ordinance tonight, we wouldn't move forward with a purchase at any one of the ones you've listed here. had come before the governing body subsequently after adopting a prior bond ordinance to get your permission to make that purchase.
Teresa, could I say something?
Yes.
Going back to the borough sidewalk, I know that there are some members here from Oak Lawn that may not be aware of a suggestion that Rich made in addition to or in lieu of the sidewalk from Harrison to Oak Lawn. So could he review that for us?
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily a suggestion, it was just something that we had a meeting with Engineering and Public Works last Thursday. And we were thinking outside the box on, you know, what we could and couldn't do, and not just tied to money, but tied to practicality of going down Ridge Road. And Rich had mentioned that we do have a drainage easement that goes from Oak Lawn, you know, through 2 side yards and then across 3 backyards that would lead to Harrison, that the borough could contemplate under the right circumstances, putting some sort of stone dust trail or something on top to allow some walkability there.
Excuse me, point of order. I believe the Zoom has frozen and we're getting information on it. Apologize for interrupting.
Yes, you know?
Nothing on my end shows that, but usually Joe will text me.
Yeah, he said it's like all fine.
It's all good here.
Is it good, Joe?
Yes, it's all good.
Okay.
So I really would like to, as long as it's on our workshop session, to discuss the probability or the possibility of putting in that sidewalk from Oak Lawn to Harrison and possibly including it in or maybe substituting a project for this. School's open, the kids are walking to school, they're walking across against traffic from Oak Lawn to Harrison. And while I know it'll take some time to do the design, to go through the county, to bid it out and to actually build it, at least if we started the process, we might have something ready by the spring or late spring. So I don't know if anybody on the council has any opinions about that sidewalk.
If I can chime in, yeah, this is an initiative I've been concerned about for a while. Because there are a lot of families with school-age children who are enrolled in our district, who live there. It's not the only area in Fairhaven where the safe routes to schools not accessible, but it's one of the areas we have to start somewhere. Or I shouldn't say start, we have to continue somewhere. Back when I had asked Engineer Gardell about this back in January, I guess the estimate at that time was roughly 95,000. I don't know if those costs have changed based on COVID, supply chain, that sort of thing. But I think understanding what that cost would look like now that we're 8 months further down the road would be helpful. I think it's an important initiative and I would support it, but I also think we have to look at the whole plethora of options for how we would spend any additional funds. But I do think in terms of sidewalks, that's an important area to be focusing on.
Well, depending on what happens on Hance Road, I think that there might, and I might be wrong, but based on what I'm looking here for the road project review, it's possible that there is money left over if we don't put sidewalks on Hance, where they're not welcome to moving that money over to the Oak Lawn to Harrison pathway. I don't know if that's something I can make a motion on. Is it just something that we discuss?
From a, practically speaking, you can't take money that's left conceptually in the Hance Road project and just move it someplace else unless you reappropriate it through another bond ordinance. You know, you can either cancel it and you can put more money in, you know, the section here of your larger spreadsheet that I have a $500,000 placeholder for roads in general. And just knowing in your mind, we're gonna cancel X and put it here in this column. Or you can at some point say to bond council, we want to reappropriate the following ordinance, so we're going to cancel the following bond ordinances because we have amounts left in them. We don't do that until projects are completely closed out. And that project is not completely closed out yet, not even close to
You're
it.
talking about the Hance Road
We
project.
talk about Hance Road project. But even Harrison isn't
But
closed
we
out yet.
know the bid will be awarded, right? by mid-November?
We should have an idea, yes, we have to award that by 11/21, so
Right.
you'll know what the bid prices are at that junction. But then there's always, you know, you have to leave contingencies in, there's always
Yes.
change orders, things can happen, so. You know, if the governing body's intent is to, fast forward money being allocated for, you know, Oak Lawn or any other sidewalks, it would be to put it in your 2021 bond ordinance. We do have some money still left in 2012, but you only have, 200,000 in drainage and 150 in roads, neither of which would cover, well, may cover a very small amount of the other estimate, but it's not gonna get you anywhere close to what you had contemplated when you originally passed 2012. Because don't forget, we expedited Willow Street and used those funds in lieu of what we had them prior conceptually allocated for.
Yeah, I think that we should take this back to, we should also talk about what the concept is in terms of easements and alternatives. When I walked that stretch on two Saturdays ago, it occurred to me that it doesn't necessarily have to be concrete either. It could be a gravel path,
Right.
which is a significantly different cost structure than poured concrete and curbs, because there's many places where there are no curbs in that area. It just goes down into the street.
Right, but it looks here as if you're going through 2 yards and then across the back of.
I'm sorry, I'm not referring to that. I'm just referring to Harding Road,
Oh.
where we can actually do a gravel path as well, rather than.
Network to be installed in that area, and we do have, you know, there is sufficient right of way. But the impact on those properties is such where you've got some densely landscaped areas. The folks have obviously improved, you know, done some improvements to basically create a screen between their house and Harding, because it's a busy road. So there is some challenges there. And obviously some coordination that needs to be done upfront sooner than later with those 3 residents. We've been working with the one on the corner of Harrison and Harding to improve some of the site triangle there. You can see some of the shrubbery and what have you has been removed.
Yeah.
We also extended the sidewalk on Harrison to the corner of Harding. There was nothing there at that, you know, prior to the project we just did this summer. So having said that, we were brainstorming and looking at some options, and I said, listen, we know the kids are somewhat cutting through, and I don't know that exact route from Oak Lawn to Harrison, but I am aware of a drainage easement that basically runs from Oak Lawn, and it pretty much dog legs back out to Harrison. Years ago, we had some drainage issues. We had to, you know, bring in an outside contractor and do some jetting and cleaning, etc. So we pieced it together And then obviously tonight, I think in your packets, that's the actual subdivision plan from 1952. That's another thing to consider. You've got, some of the homes have been there a while, so I don't necessarily know the backyards altogether. Fences, obstacles, landscaping, swimming pools. Technically easements should be left open and, accessible in the event that contractor or DPW needs to get in there. So as an option, and obviously we would have to do a title search and take a look at the actual easement documents and what they mean. And once again, from 1952, they might not be that descriptive. They just might be noted on the plan with a width and identified with the notations that you see. But it does lend an opportunity, and that's the only thing, my point was, maybe it is an opportunity to or an alternative.
Yeah, so can you give an example, maybe like the one on William Street that goes into Fairhaven Fields as an example of this type of treatment?
Yeah, so on William Street, there's, it's an extension of the property from Fairhaven Fields. It's not a right of way, it's not an easement, it's an actual part of that tract. Years ago, there was some, I think there was a 50 feet in width or maybe 25 feet in width, and at some point, the borough gave off some of that land, and they're left with, I think it's 17 feet or whatever that number is. That's more of it's a passive type trail, wood chips, with some split rail fencing up just to delineate the area. There's a signage that says, Fairhaven Fields, entrance, etc., Green Acres, just so there's some public identification. Public Works goes in there maybe every few months or so, and we just do some top dressing. And, it is utilized by the folks in the area and the children that, need to cut through and get into that area. So I guess that's probably what we're envisioning, some, more of a low impact type. Or once again, I haven't walked that area in years, so I can't really tell you what it looks like.
So we have more work to do.
We have more work to do.
Before we decide.
The Harrison lots are very deep on that area, so it's somewhat far away from the residents' homes, but once again, without really tracing the easement itself on foot and trying to see, I went back, I did look in some of our, what we call block and lot folders to see what people have submitted in the last 10 years for permits. And we have some updated surveys that we can kind of piece together to see more current conditions. But other than that, I haven't taken it much further. Once again, it was just kind of just an option that we kind of threw out there.
Rich, if I could ask, the map that is on the dais here shows the easement running through between two properties on Oak Lawn along the back of 3 properties up further to the north on Oak Lawn. And then I'm guessing that it continues all the way to Harrison.
Yes.
It cuts through a house now, is that Red Bank?
No. That's the actual alignment of the drain pipe. So everything on Harrison drains to everything on Oak Lawn drains to some catch basins. It then goes in the pipe system, just like you see there, and then ends up on Harrison into that existing pipe system. Because Harrison was actually, Oak Lawn was built after Harrison. And then from there, it drains to the north on Harrison. And that was part of the system. We actually just upgraded all that pipe all the way to Beacon.
Okay, so then the easement that runs from the rear of a property on Oak Lawn runs on a property boundary on Harrison or through a property on Harrison?
It looks like it favors the properties on Oak Lawn. The one running east and west on Oak Lawn, I think, is on one of the properties. I think it's lot 6.
6 or 7, mhm,
And then it goes to the north,
right,
7 and 8,
Right,
and then.
and then where
makes
does
its
it
way-
terminate?
It doesn't have the Harrison piece shown because that was just the Oaklawn subdivision.
Okay, so, but I'm trying to understand if it's on a property boundary between 2 lots on Harrison, or if it's through one specific property.
I believe it's on the Oaklawn properties because it's part of the Oaklawn drainage.
Well, but then how do the kids get out? Like, let's say, what I think you're suggesting is.
It goes out, it ultimately goes out to Harrison.
Okay, right, the Harrison facing property, is it on a property boundary? Does it run in the
It
middle of
runs
the
east and
property?
west on a property boundary from one of the.
On a
properties
boundary,
Harrison,
okay.
Which what's up against, I think, lot, I want to say 8.
Yeah, so it goes through, it runs between 6 and 7, and then, well, at least on this, and then it backs on the back of 7, 8, and 9. And then I guess from there it runs up a property.
It doesn't
On
show up
Harrison.
on our tax maps.
Okay.
So I did a little digging and was able to find that map. And once again, we would need to look at what's the description of that easement?
Sure. So if this were to be a plan, it would affect 4 properties on Oak Lawn, arguably, and 1 to 2 on Harrison.
A half a dozen properties probably.
Right, versus the 3 on Harding. I'm just trying to, look at this apples, oranges, what are we affecting, what areas of the property, that sort of thing. Just, I want to make sure we're all.
Once
on
again,
the-
it's an
yeah.
option we looked at.
Yeah,
not-
no, and I think it's an
not
interesting,
walking the properties, not knowing, it may just be a couple fences.
yeah,
But knowing what's out on Harding, that's a challenge. I'm
right.
gonna be upfront and honest with you as the
Right.
engineer, that's a challenge.
Well, and I think one of the things too in my mind is I'd much rather have my kids on a back trail riding their bikes to school than on Harding.
Mhm.
At the same time, as a borough elected official, one of my concerns would be is everybody, all the properties potentially affected going to say, great, this is awesome and welcome it, or are we in for a fight and litigation is going to result? So,
The other thing I want to add is, if we're going to look at, improving the walk network, I think you need to look at from Prospect to Harrison. The
Sure.
county put in a new traffic signal. The speed limit does go down as you approach that traffic signal. They did do some ADA improvements at that intersection, I guess in hopes of maybe at that point a sidewalk would link into that area. And then maybe a phase 2 would be from Harrison to Rutgers, because the first property on the corner of Rutgers and Harding has sidewalk. And then obviously our bird sanctuary is heavily used by folks that go on foot. And that's always been a challenge too, where as you head towards down, there's a bit of a sloped area. So from an engineering standpoint, design wise might be challenging, but along that split rail fence, we did some clearing last year to try to, keep up with that tree line, but there are quite a few people that go in there and utilize that space.
So we have a good deal more homework to do before we can
I
have
will
a
continue, I'll
conversation.
update some cost estimates.
Yeah.
Based on today's,
Yeah.
bid prices, I'll run some scenarios on if we just do Oaklawn to Harrison, or if we do Prospect to Harrison, and then look at the next phase as possible, just so you have those figures.
Yes.
We'll go from there.
I think, may I speak?
Sure.
I just want to make sure.
Of course you can.
Should we contact those residents that would be affected by your proposed alternative here? Because it looks like at least 6 homes will be affected, and I would like to get some feeling, I would like to make sure everybody on the street is aware that we are looking into this. I can see pros and cons for both options. I can see a benefit to a sidewalk going all the way to Little Silver. I can see the benefit of a nice little trail here. So.
Yeah.
It might not be an easy decision, but
Yeah, we can run those in parallel.
maybe it's something that we'll just make sure that we know exactly what homes we're talking about and everyone is aware that we're looking at this, so they have an opportunity to comment.
I could also provide that information, Teresa, I can even give you an updated list of properties that would be affected, so then even you guys can, when you're out there talking, to the folks, you know, okay, it looks like it's gonna be on lot 6, 7, and 8, etc. Just so you have that.
That would be very helpful.
I'll get those addresses from governing body members. And keep in mind, Rich isn't proposing one versus the other. He just, it doesn't make any difference which the governing body decides to do. It was just, we just happened to be speaking at the last meeting of the Engineering Public Works, and we said, is there any alternative you can think of that might work, that would be either less costly or easier to do than putting the sidewalks in on Harding.
So, Ben, you have a follow-up?
If I may, as a follow-up, just one question I wanted to ask the council. From the projects that are envisioned for roads, sidewalks and so on, do we agree that this is of enough importance because of safety issues that we want to have it addressed next year, at some point next year, early the year? I just want to make sure, because we have other projects on the pipeline that Teresa mentioned. And I just wanted to get a feeling as to whether we feel that this is a priority enough that we should put something else aside.
Well, I think it is obvious that it's missing. We've got residents that will get to speak shortly during section 8 of the agenda. And I'm sure we'll be able to gather that feedback firsthand. Also, I think we've got to consider this. I mean, it's just, it's pretty obvious. I think we should have the facilities committee also take a pretty close look at this and then bring a recommendation forward. Rich, while we're talking about sidewalks, can you just give an update quickly on where we are with the Hands project in terms of bids and what to expect in a short timeline, maybe, if that's something you have?
Sure. Since the last meeting that you guys gave direction on what option we were gonna design with, we've laid in the curb alignment, to more accurate level. We've also looked at the sidewalk layout. I know the big question is, what's the impact on trees, etc. To be honest, we're not there yet. So the next step that we do is, once we've got things laid out on paper, go out in the field. Myself and Nick will actually pull string, take measurements. Surveys are accurate, but the one thing I've mentioned to my liaisons is, if we were going to locate this pole, the surveyor might have put the stick here, which maybe if you took it here, that 6, 8, 10 inches makes a difference, especially with a tree. Because if you can sneak past with a sidewalk, and that's always the intent. When we design, we make things work in the field. So now the next step is to go in the field and get that more level of accuracy and take a look at that. So we put together a short timeline, obviously based on when this project needs to be awarded by. We ran some dates. Obviously, I have to come back and ask for authorization to bid the project. We need to submit it to DOT for their approval. We need to advertise the bids and then ultimately take the bids and award the bid. So we backed into that calendar, and
I can give you those numbers, or Councilman McHugh was going to
Sure,
talk
yeah, I
about.
can say it right now, and feel free to correct me. Authorize the bid by 10/12.
And that would be the governing body needs to authorize about bid by 10/12.
So by then, all that
That's your next
legwork, field work will have been done, advertised 10/21. And we need to award the bid by November 8th or call a special meeting.
We'll open those bids on the 4th, get them to the borough attorney, low bidder, you'd have to award at your regular meeting on the 8th, or you'd need to call a special meeting prior, because the bid has to be awarded by the 21st, and your next second meeting up in November is the 22nd.
So Rich, what would we expect to see on October 12th? Like, what package of
You
information?
will see pretty much a completed base map and design. Which we had talked about whether or not, and Teresa, you can speak to this, whether or not we're gonna be, I can certainly PDF those and get them out to you guys ahead of time.
As soon as Rich has,
Typically, if we're doing, I could tell you in the past, I would come with like 80 to 90% complete drawings and say, here's where we're at, I need authorization to bid, I wanna wrap this thing up, and we have to get it out. In this case, we've done a lot of work already, and we know the direction we're going, so our intention is to pretty much have everything wrapped up by the 12th, which means we would get things to you Wednesday before or so.
we'll send it to the PDF ahead of time that you can look at, but, it's ultimately, Rich will have it submitted to NJDOT, and then, you won't, obviously, he's gonna design the base bid, and he's designing the sidewalks as an alternate, and when the bids come in, you'll know where you are with the numbers. And you can, at that point, decide what you want to award.
And I think we had a couple of eyebrows raised when you said we kind of know what direction we're going, just so that people are aware. There are 3 discrete paths we can go down. We could do nothing, which is do nothing. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Then it's the roadway and infrastructure. Then it's roadway, infrastructure, and sidewalks. And those are the 3 discrete paths. Again, do nothing, roadway and infrastructure, and sidewalks. That infrastructure includes drainage. And that drainage doesn't necessarily have to go to the river, it can go down into the water table. There's a lot of different scenarios. And I'm sure that's what's going to take a good deal of your time on. Meg, did you have a question?
Yes, Rich, on the 12th, will you be showing us the base maps with
On the
the?
what, I'm sorry.
October 12th.
October
On the
12th.
12th.
Yeah, will you be showing us the base maps with the 3 options overlaid, or 3 separate options, or how will that?
It's gonna be the roadway design, with everything on there. The bid is gonna be broken up into options,
Okay,
which is one option. Option 1 or alternate 1 is sidewalk, installation of sidewalk. And whatever associated work is for that sidewalk.
so the base map that you will show us will show the roadway, curbs, sidewalks. All right, so then we would just be
And they're all
imagining.
identified, so you'll know,
And the-
alternate bid number 1, quantities, et
And-
cetera.
And the cartway doesn't change.
The
with any of
cartway
this.
does not change.
Okay,
Will there be estimates on cost included with that?
As part of the DOT submission, I have to provide an updated engineer's estimate, so yes. Yeah, that's always a given. I do that as we're doing it, because it helps me put the bid packet together too, with quantities.
gravel and so forth.
there's a tremendous
That's
amount of heaving and issues out there that we've identified many square feet of sidewalk that needs to be taken care of. Years ago, we actually put in some asphalt ramping. We got some pushback from the residents for doing that because it's not exactly aesthetically pleasing. But we knew at some point it was on our capital plan and we were gonna be coming in and doing the sidewalks within the gentry. So to your point, from prioritization, there are projects like that that are already. And I think if you go back and listen to the Zoom calls that we had on the Hance Road, there were some residents that spoke about the existing sidewalk network as well. And the preservation of that sidewalk network and the maintenance and the repair. So the road programs and sidewalk programs are very good for that type of work. It allows you to get a lot done throughout the borough. Once again, it's up to you guys to kind of take a look, I guess, prioritization wise as well. And also, obviously, I have to update the budget for the Oak Lawn piece to see where we are with that.
Yeah, I would say I'm not an old man. I've only done this 4 or 5 years now. But the amount of title work and the legal work, it's gonna be way past November. So there's no trade-off right now for Oak Lawn versus Hance. It's like, we've got a grant, we've got a budget line item that we've already budgeted. We do nothing, we do something, we'll figure that out. But I do think we should prioritize what we're doing over on Oak Lawn. That's my personal opinion. There's 6 votes up here and we'll all decide where that falls on the priority list. But I do think that'll take 6, 7, 8 months. You don't pour concrete in January necessarily unless you have to. So there's implications about, what we'll see happen on Oak Lawn. That won't really even factor in until after November, which is really what we're looking for in terms of the roadway and any other improvements we do on Hance.
Can I just clarify? So did I understand when you were talking about the gentry and historic, that those are really prioritization projects? Because again, my point is, I know timing, I respect the conversations that we've had. There's so many pressing needs in the borough on basic sidewalks anywhere you move. And honestly, I can't even think of a street I can walk, maybe 3rd Street, that I can walk down that I'm not tripping over a sidewalk. And I just need to put it out there. If I'm, if the horse is still breathing that I'm eating, I apologize. But we have so many priorities that this project, to start something before we can even commit to saying we're gonna have the gentry done or we're going to have the historic centers done, just to me just seems like boiling an ocean, when we should really just be focusing on some of the top priorities. That's, I can't say that enough.
My only point was that those 2 locations within the borough have been on our list for planned projects. We put the numbers in for our capital, expenditures, and they are sizable projects. There's a decent amount of work. I don't have the updated numbers, but it's well in the 6 figures just to repair those sidewalks and to do it properly. And obviously take into all the ADA considerations for those sidewalk networks.
So I'm sorry, I'm missing your point. So that means that it's in the budget. It's too big to start the project, or
No,
I
I'm
missed your
saying
point.
that those 2 locations were sizable projects to
Right.
begin with. And we have been, for years and years, have been talking and honestly also letting the residents know in those areas, yes, we're coming, we're gonna be doing something there. We've been updating our cost estimates every year. We finally got it on the 2021 road sidewalk and drainage program, which is on hold just from a budgetary standpoint because of the Willow Street project. But that was my only point.
So it sounds like.
I'm gonna, just to give you an idea timing wise, you know, the focus, the governing body, on your 2021 bond ordinance, you know, we have 5 meetings left in the year. It takes, you know, once you tell me what you want in your 2021 bond ordinance, and that doesn't include anything for property purchase or if you wanted to up facilities for argument's sake, but just what you're looking at here, then I have to work with the CFO and bond counsel to get the bond ordinance prepared. It has to be introduced at one meeting. It has to have a public hearing adoption at the second meeting, and we can't roll over from one governing body to another. So you can't introduce it in 21 and adopt it in 22. You have to start the process over in end of January. So my point is, many of these projects, whether it's Oak Lawn or whether it's the drainage project in over in the Button area, Park Lane, or Hunting Lane, or anything else you see on here, or any of these micro projects, they're all on hold until you allocate additional funding for them. You know, the ones you're talking about, the hands, that's done. The funding's been allocated, the grant's available. So, you know, that's not being held up by monetary considerations. Those other things are. So, you know, you can talk amongst yourself, you can, I need numbers in each one of these categories or not. I mean, if we want to move forward with, for argument's sake, you know, the restoration of Carr Pond, which the EC and everyone wants to do, so we need funds available for that. So it's really up to you. This is not my bond ordinance, it's the governing body's bond ordinance. It's your set of priorities when it comes to what you want to allocate funding for. But in order to move forward with these, you're going to need to adopt a bond ordinance in this year or wait until next year if you don't get it done this year.
Right, and just to kind of follow up what engineer was saying, a lot of these, whether it's the drainage over by Buttonwood, which is, you know, again, multiple emails, and we've been promising like, oh, you know, we're gonna get it ready, and then sorry, the Willow Street thing popped up. We're splitting the cost 50%, so this kind of emergency reduce real quick. Historic district, before I was even on council, they've been working on that. What was the other one? Oh, and Gentry, you know, I'm sure Councilwoman Christian Keith could speak to it. Gentry, it's never been repaired or replaced, and these people have been very patient. And like Engineer Gardella tried to kind of put Band-Aids on certain things, but there's some serious lifting going on with the trees by the sidewalks and stuff like that. And while they, you know, keep reminding us, hey, this is basically unacceptable, and I generally agree. This is next. You guys are next. We're gonna get to it. And there's obviously pandemic and what have you, put construction off for about over a year. So I think it's responsible to.
So what's your suggestion then? To reallocate and fund these projects, the historic district and the Gentry? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, well, to fund those, yes.
There's a placeholder.
Some of these are named, right? And the micro projects, I think, is also very beneficial because they're not named areas, but, you know, the DPW works, public works guys, Engineer Gardella, they know of certain areas where this sidewalk is really bad. And it's a good way to kind of, you know, anyone on the west side of Hants who travels to Knollwood, the Hunting Lane will affect, it will make it safer for those kids on the west side to get to school. So it helps everybody, but this really kind of just helps spread out the improvements, like Councilwoman McKay was saying, around town to kind of like spread the wealth around, to help all these little places that don't require huge construction, but we can make it safe for everyone.
Yeah, I think there's a good deal more thought and work that needs to go in by all of us before we prioritize these things, because I feel like there's no consensus right now. There's a lot of thought, but I don't think there has been a lot of dialogue. And so having received this week and having had this discussion in open forum, I think I would encourage everybody before the next meeting to come up with your priority list or come together without violating our Sunshine Act and come to the table with the proposal.
And keep in mind, when you talk about generic, this general drainage and roads or sidewalks, micro project improvements, you really raise the dollar amount for the bond ordinance. You know, you don't have to, you know, you could certainly say, in my mind, these are the priorities, but you don't actually have to pass that bond ordinance. You don't actually have to name them. You just have to make sure you have enough in there to fund what it is you're looking to fund. If that makes
And
sense.
we can look backward and understand what was reasonable, and I'll work with Leanie on the finance aspect, with the finance committee. Just knowing what have we done, and we could see it here.
Yeah,
in
the
the
green is
previous
what was
spreadsheet.
funded in prior years.
And you could say, we're not gonna make any capital improvements, or there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done, and we're gonna make capital improvements and decide what's the right fit for the town going forward. But that should tie out to which projects do you wanna try to get done? And if it's none, then it's not gonna cost us anything. We're not gonna do anything. If there are projects here like Oak Lawn, then, you know, we're gonna have to understand what, you know, generally what the costs are gonna be and weigh that against you know, what our budget looked like last year, what our budget's gonna look like this year, and what your desires are.
And any other capital project that you have in mind, or anything else that would need to be funded through debt?
If I make a couple comments, actually one comment and one question. The comment I would have as somebody who has been in council since just beginning of this year, we have too many projects. And I think maybe we need to cut back on what we're doing and get a fewer number of projects resolved. I mean, we have the waterfront, pocket parks, we have sidewalks, road construction, we have DPW, police station. It just strikes me for the small town we are and the small number of personnel we have, Borough employees. And it's a real challenge. I'm not saying we should drop everything. I'm just saying, you know, and that's gonna come up on the workshop and, you know, 2 items on the strategic initiatives, strategic planning. I think we should really seriously consider curtailing some of our projects so that we're able to focus on fewer things and get them done. You mentioned the McCarty Pond project, for example, that is unresolved. Swanker's Pond is not unresolved. I think residents have also mentioned those projects, what happened to them. And I think my understanding from the reasons why we didn't get to it is because there's too much on the table. So that would be one comment. If I may ask one question, Rich, on October 12th, will you have the answer about what trees may be impacted on hands? You will. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're able to communicate that.
And that large tree on that's 44 hands will not be impacted.
Yes, yes, that's it. That's important to know that red oak on 44 hands, which is now certified as the largest red oak tree in Monmouth County, it would not be impacted by this project. Thank you.
Council President, if I could just jump in for a second. I think it's important to consider the allocations and the history of allocations here. Just obviously, or I'm guessing, maybe I won't guess, Teresa, we can change the bond ordinance total to any potential amount.
In 2021?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I just populated some placeholders to show you.
Okay, these are just your suggestions based on the.
Not even my
department
suggestions,
reports.
just I either gleaned it from, you know, I've already gotten estimates from the engineer for the McCarter Pond piece, you know, or Rich, I know Rich once had put in for a loader that's sitting in there. You know, I know the rec committee had mentioned the $100,000, so I used information to populate this, but
Sure.
it's your bond ordinance, it's your authorization, not mine.
Okay, so yes, I think it's important, Council President's suggestion that we all consider where we want to spend the money, just because, you know, these placeholders are here doesn't mean this is where it has to be spent. And I also note the import of the potential acquisition of property, which would change the landscape of this bond ordinance tremendously. So that's another thought we should all have in the back of our heads. And Teresa, I appreciate the historic view here because you can see when certain areas of spending have most recently taken place. You know, and Betsy, feel free to jump in. I know as a member or a liaison to RAC as the vice, you know, I appreciate the $100,000 placeholder because I think that our rec initiatives are important to spend on. And it looks like the general park improvements were last allocated funding in 2017. And just on an ongoing basis, and this is just an example, I think this is true of other departments as well, that when it comes to the capital nature of this type of spending, unless we put it in a bond ordinance or take it out of our revolving capital of 215 every year, there's no money on hand or available. There's no savings account where we stock away for it. So I think it's really important that we consider how we want to allocate those funds this year.
Absolutely.
Any other comments from the council on these two items?
My last question is just where do we stand on Oakland? We're going to wait and hear Rich, your recommendation. We're going to look at the two options, Harding Road versus the easement.
I'm gonna send you the addresses for the easements,
Yeah,
so
we
you
have
might
to-
want to talk to those residents and see, you know, what kind of input you'll get from the residents.
And we also have the option of some projects that we budgeted for, that we've allocated for, we can review that and pull some money out of there to pay for it.
You will, in 2012, which was the last bond ordinance you had, you only have $200,000 for drainage and 150 total for roads. I have to look and see if Hunting Lane is broken out separately in that ordinance. I don't recall off the top of my head whether it is or it isn't.
But I'm just saying, for example, if there's money left over from the Harrison project that we're just finishing
You
up.
can't, but there's still a process you'd have to go through.
Right, I realize that, but I'm saying
the funding.
we have the option to go through that process.
Yes, you do,
Okay,
you know,
so there are places where there's potential money that we could cobble together.
yes, but at the end of the day, you're still looking at the fact that you know, the monies that were allocated or authorized up through, 2020
Right.
are pretty much expended except for the amounts I just told you.
Right.
So yes, you can conceptually, it doesn't matter whether you say we're gonna use money from Harrison or from Baton that wasn't allocated. It's just a matter of you're not spending it here and you're gonna spend it someplace else.
Right.
Great.
Okay, it's back on the workshop for next.
Yes, we're gonna revisit this in our next meeting. Proposed 2022 council meeting dates. There's a slate of dates that everybody received. Do I have any comments on those dates? Did anybody? This is the first time we're seeing it. Usually what we do is we compare this to other known calendars, school calendars and holiday, national holiday calendars and so forth. We will get many bites at the apple here. We don't have to decide this tonight, but wanted to get this onto the workshop. Does anybody want to make any comments on this?
My comment would be on Wednesday, February 16th. I think that even though school returns to session, many people tend to go on vacation that entire week. So that would be my comment on that date. And my only other comment would be the Monday, September 26th is Rosh Hashanah, and we should try for an alternate date.
Yeah, I would say maybe the 27th or 28th, depending on when observance begins and ends there. Did you have an alternative idea on February? In February?
I tried reworking the beginning of the calendar. It doesn't seem to work because there are so many Monday holidays, and that's the typical day of our council meeting. I think the only alternative I could see would be to push it to the 22nd, which is a really big gap in the beginning of the year to not have a council meeting. The other alternative would be to have meetings back to back. Unless we wanted to do January 18th, which is a Tuesday, and then follow it with February
February.
1st, right?
Well, if you did it on February 7th, that's 2 weeks after January 24th. And then 2 weeks later, you would have 2 weeks and a day, you have the 22nd.
The 18th and then the 7th.
Is there a holiday on February 17th?
Yeah.
I mean, 7th.
You have January 24th, Monday, and then 2 weeks later, you would have February 7th. And then 2 weeks and a day later would be the 22nd. So it's, you do have a 2 week gap between there.
Okay, then it does work.
Yeah, February 7th may be a good alternative to the 16th, and then we don't meet again until the 28th.
That seems reasonable. Let's see. Can anybody cross check the school calendar? That looks like that works.
Yeah, it looked like it works. And then September 26th could be,
The 27th.
27th.
That's on historic probably, but
Or let's say, hang on. August 5th. What if we did September 6th? And then the 19th.
You know what? When does school start? It starts on, it's on the 5th.
This,
Fifth is Labor Day.
Yeah.
we don't know the start date yet. They haven't set the school calendar for 2022. Although this year, our council meeting was the first day of school as well, so. That
we
would
can
be
go
my
6th to
suggestion.
19th. Is that what you're suggesting?
That would be my suggestion.
Okay,
That would
we'll look
avoid
at that.
a whole swap out.
Great.
So you're looking for September 6th and September 19th as opposed to the 26th?
26th is Rosh Hashanah.
I know,
Yes, as
Okay.
opposed to the 26th,
okay.
6th and then 19th.
And then even if we wanted to, we could pull off the 11th and put it on the 3rd.
Okay, we will bring this, we'll bring this back for further consideration in the next meeting.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, and then, the formation of a strategic initiatives ad hoc committee. Would like to, open that one up. I believe Suzanne and Lillian and May. You want to just round robin this one real quick and brief on it?
Sure, if you allow me to start.
Sure.
I think some of the discussion we had today shows that we could use as a council some better tools to help us with strategic planning. So the idea is to create a strategic planning committee that essentially will help consolidate information from the administration, from the different departments, from the different committees from the council and other commissions, and bring that information together so the council can have a better top-down view of what is happening. What are the projects that are current, that are in completion, in process, and what's coming up, preferably over 2 to 3 year time horizon. So, which also matches with our desire to plan on a, as far as the finance committee, on a 2 to 3 year basis. I think part of the issue, from my perspective, is that I don't feel that we have a clear view of what's coming. And it makes it just difficult to make decisions. I also believe that the residents don't have a clear view of what's coming or what might be in the pipeline. So the idea would be that the strategic committee We'll consolidate that information and work with Teresa and others in the borough to essentially conduct an annual strategic planning session that will be a public session so that everyone can see what we have coming up in the pipeline, what's going on right now with the different departments, what are the different needs, and what is coming up. In addition, the idea would be for this committee to work with the different departments and the different council committees to create a master sheet. So we actually can see on a master sheet what the projects are, what the timeline is, and what's coming up. And the idea is not to go and say, why didn't you finish a project? That's not the idea, but just to know that the project may be delayed or it's in process or so on. But we are able to see it on some kind of master sheet so that we can actually have a view of what's happening. And that kind of tool is going to help us have better discussions so that we actually understand that more like the totality of what our decision making needs to be. And you also provide, I think, a lot more transparency to ourselves and the public in terms of what the workflow of the borough is, what the needs are in general, and how we are making decisions on what to do next. This committee would also be in charge of making public presentations on an as-need basis. It's possible that in meeting with different departments, we might identify a need to make a public presentation on a certain topic or work with that department or that council committee on creating a presentation so that we make sure that where the key items are that are most important and impactful for borough residents, that we are conducting those public presentations and providing that transparency. So that's sort of the short of the idea. We are in the process of compiling a summary of what the objectives would be, so that is very clear. But that would be the idea, to have an annual planning session, to meet at a minimum quarterly, although I expect it will be a lot more frequently in the very first stages of this committee, to create this master sheet and to essentially provide ourselves better tools and much more transparency so we can make better decisions and also make sure that our residents know what we have in the pipeline and what is envisioned next. Did I miss something or any comments?
So I don't know if there was a meeting prior when you said we put together, so thank you for that. What I would envision when I think strategy, I think vision. And I think when it comes to vision, it's getting voice of the customer. Voice of the customer to me is our community and understanding what the needs are there. And then that also includes everything that you've said, project management. You brought it to the tactical level and prioritization, which again, I think that's been, beating a drum on that. But I think that we look at a high level around vision. Where do we want the borough to go and look like in 2-3 years, whatever the time frame is? I suggest that we bring in an expert, and I know that there's resources that we can use that won't cost anything, so we don't have to charge our taxpayers anything for that. But to always start with strategy. And the reason, and I'll continue on why I asked the question about private, session with just the council and so forth, because I think that there are roles that we play, and I think that we need to identify in a more structured how we work together as a council. I'm not sure, and maybe because I'm new, but as I watch the interactions and so forth, I think that there's a way of working together. That comes into what expectations are, if there's any type of scenario that we're put into, who takes more of a lead role on that. Clearly, yourself, Chris, in your current role. But that's why I asked that question, because I think that there needs to be some conversation that we can bring back to the public, but maybe just having that conversation around, what are the roles, what are some expectations in different scenarios. That's why I asked that question, if that makes sense to everybody. What I also would suggest when we talk about the strategic planning, and I think it's a great idea, Councilman, Keith and I were trying to get together, the last couple of weeks just to, start this initiative, but with possibly new mayor coming in or that idea, is now the time to do that? Does that new position change any of the thinking and so forth? I would just put that out there. And I'm happy to participate, and I hope after my term is up, in a few more months, that there's some type of, role that I can play in, I don't know, on a committee or something. What I wanted to add also, because I think that this is so important, is we do get communication. Teresa is fabulous in replying to communication, but it's been really brought to, I think, a heightened conversation point that the council and the role in the committees needs to be formed a little bit more structured. And that was in an email that we received in regards to some of the committees not being familiar with some of the projects that are going on, or not being counseled or advised or getting their suggestions from it. So I just want to make sure we put all of these pieces together to start at the vision and then bring it to what you were talking about, that with the entire prioritization of projects.
Thank you, Suzanne, and I think you mentioned some very important things that I also have noticed. I think every council committee needs to be described, needs to have an objective and a vision, as to, for your words, needs to have a reason to exist, an objective set out in January for the rest of the year. I don't believe we have that in a clear form today. And if we do that, it will help us determine what council committees we need or don't need, or if there are additional committees that we need. And it will also set out an objective for the committee that is very crystal clear through the end of that year and from the year after that. So I think you touched on something that is quite important, and I fully agree with that. And I think that as we work on this idea of this strategic planning, my hope is that a lot of these items will come to bear, and we'll be able to work with the different groups and say, going forward, that's how we want to have all the committees set up. We want them all to have lay out their objectives. I think Councilwoman Keith mentioned in the last meeting that you felt that the land use committee that was being restarted to deal with current zoning challenges needed to have a very clear set of objectives, and it needed to have very clear objectives to include the public in whatever we do as far as changing land use ordinances in our town. And hopefully, I think I fully agree with that we need to create those objectives. So it's I would hope that we can get together, the three of us, and maybe clarify more of this for the next meeting. So we're able to present a more finalized view of this and come up with some dates. That's how we would like to get started working. But hopefully, I welcome feedback from the rest of the council. The idea is really, as you mentioned, to have a clear vision, strategy, and a way for us to be able to understand everything from a bird's eye view and be able to have better tools to make decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll say something.
Yes, please.
First of all, it says here, proposed strategic ad hoc committee. So do we vote on this? How does that work?
No, well, I am suggesting that we put this committee together because Suzanne and Lilini and Megan brought this forward independently, and I think the three of them together should form that committee.
But do we vote? I know we voted on the land use committee. Do we vote on
We
this?
can vote on this, yeah, sure.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to propose that we put it to a vote. And secondly, I do agree that this is an extremely important committee, especially in light of our conversation today.
Yeah.
And I would just like to say that I think that all council members should be included on this committee because you're making some very important decisions. You're prioritizing some very important issues. And I think the input of the council and all members of the council is very important.
I think ultimately, I don't think you can actually have all members on it.
If you do it in public forum, you can.
I mean,
May I clarify?
sure.
Just, that's an important point. We won't be making any decisions. We would be gathering the data.
Right, you'll be prioritizing it.
No, we will be gathering the data and creating a master sheet of information and an annual planning process such that it comes to the council for decision. The strategic planning committee will not make any decisions. It will be gathering the information to provide you that information as a council to make decisions. So we won't be saying project A or project B or project C. We're just saying here, these are the projects. This is everything on the table. These are the timelines. These are the objectives. And then it all comes here. So it's essentially an information, I don't know if I want to oversimplify it, but I see it as an information gathering tool to put it together. But we won't be overriding any decisions by any of the departments, committees, or the council.
And I think the other important piece to understand is that the intention is once, at a minimum, once annually, the entire council will meet at a public meeting to review all of those initiatives, because we all do sit on these various committees and bring it forward. So that's an opportunity to really synthesize that information, and then the committee will work to keep tabs on some of that information throughout the year, and as decisions are made, if projects are pursued or removed from the list, or something else comes up as an emergency, whatever it might be. I think the other piece of that is that minimum one annual strategic planning committee meeting with everybody is also the opportunity for the public to say, hey, here are the top 4 things that I've seen recently that are really important. I realize you might not get to it this week or this month or this year, but in the next couple of years, here are some things that we really care about. And then I also think the strategic planning committee can also assist from a very process-based level. When new committees are formed or committees are getting to work, that they have those guideposts and guide tools of how many committee members do we need? Is it balanced? Do we need borough professionals on the committee? Do we need council members? Do we need members of the public? Do they have objectives and goals? Is it a forever committee? Is it a very limited committee for this specific objective or initiative? And kind of coordinating some synergy with all of that.
And who would be making those decisions?
What decisions?
The council, whichever committee it is, they will be making those decisions. So I think all we would, the idea would be that this is providing some top level view and consolidated with the council of what's happening, so that we are able to envision that, and also some kind of control. Do all the committees are doing, are having their meetings, or do they all have their goals and objectives done? And gather that feedback and put it in somewhere that we can all see it, because we operate in silos in this council. I don't think that we all each know or fully understand what everyone is working on, and there is no data gathering process that can digest that in a simple way that we can all look at it. So for example, you are on the recreation committee, right? And we reported to the recreation committee. There might be some important decisions coming up with the recreation committee. I have no idea what they are. The idea would be that we have some kind of communication process to put it together so that someone can look at a page and know that this is what the recreation committee is doing, and as well as the others, and this is how things connect. It's really an information and gathering tool.
But who would be distilling all that information?
You would have to work with each of the committees and the departments to understand what they're working on. It would be time consuming.
But we're the benefactor of their work to make the decisions, just like we were talking about with all of the expenditures, capital expenditures that we're considering.
Right.
So that we understand Schwenker's Pond doesn't get forgotten when we want to, whatever the shiny new thing is. And we could say, we've been looking at this for a long time. We want to clean up the pond, or we want to clean up McCarter Pond, or we want to enter with a solution for Oak Lawn. Where does that all fit in? And then we hopefully will have some kind of matrix, not with just money, but also some type of impact. How does it impact the strategy that the council wants to have going forward? I think that just looking at the dates from our agenda item previous to this, I would think pretty early in the year, we're gonna have some new folks up here, right? And Suzanne will have potentially want an RFH Board of Ed seat, and somebody else will be here, and there'll be somebody sitting right here. That'll be a new person as well. And so there will be at least 2 people up here that's gonna be, it'll be different, and whoever serves on that committee will be, you know, feeding that information, synthesizing that information. So all of us as a body, the 6 of us and whoever the next person is here, will be able to make the decisions going forward. Right now, we're getting, I think it's to Suzanne's point earlier, that there's a lot of skilled people up here, but it's a lot of information getting plugged into something, but it's not there's no master dashboard that effectively we can all look at and go, okay, here's where I am, here's where they are, and here's what we should be doing going forward. It's very transactional and it's very independent. And what we want to do is create a cohesive strategy. And that's really the point of pulling this together going forward. The master plan, which we all know is a land use document, doesn't do that for us. That really tells us how is land going to be used. It's the biggest misnomer of a document I've ever heard in my life. You'd think a master plan, you think of what we're talking about here. It's really the strategy for what we want to do going forward. Do we want to do something near the dock with that piece of land? Do we want to do something with our ponds? Like, where do we want to really put our effort? And then we can come together, have that conversation, not in this committee, but they're going to assimilate all of that so we can have it in a digestible, comprehensible strategy. That's really what they're going to be tasked with doing. The three of them.
So I see it as you have your strategy and your vision, where you want to go. And then you have pillars. And one of the pillars could be master plan, road sidewalk development, and then you have your tactics underneath it. And then the next one could be something around, I'm making this up, personnel, including police department, and then you have the tactics underneath that. So I just think that there's no, to Rich, your point, that, Chris, I'm sorry, that there's no vision, there's no master plan, there's no community input, to say, this is what the community wants us to work on. And then here's the tactics underneath what that pillar could be.
And so my last point, let me just, one thing on this. If we choose early enough in the year, and we say, here are the 6 things we absolutely want to get done, and everything else is gravy, we can really plot that out throughout the year and say, here's what we accomplished, here are the things that we really wanted to get done for the year. And I think that ultimately, if we have that meeting, if we get to work now and we come together and do it as a council, governing body, we will be able to execute on that throughout the year. And that, I think, in the past was always missing.
Yeah, if I may add, that just coming in as a new person this year, I think, Teresa, you made a very good point in the last meeting, that if we decide to do something today, like build a road or a sidewalk, it will probably happen potentially happen 5 years from now. There'll be a council person sitting there in January, 5 years from now, who has no idea that there's that project on the pipeline, and maybe asked to actually sign off the final design of that project and get it approved so that we can go to bid, right? So I like your word dashboard, because if there is a dashboard and we have what I'm calling a master sheet, you calling it a dashboard, that's a better description. So you can come in and say, okay, these are all the things that are going on. This is coming. So when it actually comes to your desk, you're not surprised. I think that is one thing that I really feel that is missing. I've seen a number of projects come in that I didn't know that we were doing, because we lack such a process to describe what we are doing at a consolidated level, or even what the priorities should be. So I really think this is an opportunity. I believe all of us should put in input into the committee. So we created the way this council would like it to be. But I just want to give you comfort that it's an information gathering tool, not a tool that is not making decisions for anyone.
Right, I concur that the idea behind the strategic committee is extremely important. My objection is it's only limited to the input of 3 people. That I feel the entire council should be part of distilling that information, of contacting committees, and being a part of the process rather than being at the receiving end and being given all of this information that's been compiled.
Well,
That's my only
to your
objection.
point, that's similar to how Knollwood did their strategic plan and RFH started last year. I don't know where that stands.
Right,
But that's to your
that's
point.
strategic.
We're doing it in person, we're doing it with the public, we're doing it with the council. We bring someone in to facilitate. What are the priorities? And then we drive down from there.
But someone has to be talking to the different groups and put in a spreadsheet together, and that can't be
But I
the
think
entire
that's the
council.
but I think that's the tactic that comes out of this meeting.
Right,
So
so.
I already have some spreadsheets and some.
So we,
historical-
I knew you would.
You have every kind of
Teresa's sitting there saying, I got it all.
spreadsheet.
But I think bringing it to the higher level is the strategy with the input, and it could be done, we could identify the community if they want to come, or do different representatives from different cohorts of the community want to come.
Right.
And represent, so I think that could be a great idea, just whiteboard, right, go over and do a big whiteboard in one of the auditoriums and.
If I may say, we need data. I don't
Of
even
course you
think,
do.
we
No,
need
no,
first
of
of all
course
to
you do.
gather that data, and what I'm saying is that this group will be gathering that data.
To drive then the strategy meeting.
Because I wouldn't see a point in doing a strategy meeting, let's say in the next meeting.
No, not at all, you're
I don't know
reinventing the
what we were
wheel,
talking about.
right? We have the questionnaire that went out, the survey, maybe there's even another brief survey that goes out to the community to get some of their thinking, and then we come back in and pull together. But you're absolutely right, all data points need to be brought in so that we can then, and new perspectives.
Can I just say one thing? The
Yeah.
strategic committee that was formed by the school board wasn't just 3 school board members. It included members of the community
Yes, I
from
agree.
many different areas. So from the
Exactly.
foundation of that committee, there were lots of other people
I agree.
having input.
That's a great
That
idea.
was my
And in
suggestion.
this committee, you're talking 3 people.
Well, not
It's a big
necessarily.
response. Well,
But no, that might.
Well, no, that's what we're
Yes.
talking
What I-
about now, is this
what I'd like
committee and what it's gonna look like, that's.
Yeah, what I'd like
Councilwoman
to.
said, she wants feedback from the other council members, so that we
Yeah.
can make sure that the driving pieces are all in place.
So what we did, as an example, when we started with the brush committee, the 2 of us were assigned. And then we went out and we decided that we're gonna get people from every single district in town.
right, but we
And we
were
put-
compiling information. We were
Understood.
looking for people to work with us.
Understood. And so the point I'm making, and I'm agreeing with you, by the way, is let's appoint the committee, have them come back to us. What's the mandate? Who's gonna be on it? When are they gonna meet? What areas of expertise do we need that don't exist up here at all? No matter how many times Mike and I or you attend one of the meetings that they're gonna facilitate, it may be somebody outside of this organization that's really gonna help be most impactful. So my suggestion is, and I think what's on the table here, and maybe we can put this to a motion. And the second is to appoint the 3, have them do a little bit of work and come back to us with a recommendation as to how this thing will unfold.
Well, that's a
Hold
different
on, I'm
mission.
sorry, one second,
In
Allison.
the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a long-range planning committee that somehow disbanded, I don't know.
Mhm.
Council decided it was no longer needed, but they did similar to what you're saying,
Okay.
and it involved some commission and committee members, public, council people.
Yeah.
Go back into the minutes if you need it, and they appointed them by same as you did for
Okay.
minutes.
Alright.
And it was the same concept.
So.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, right, and I think too, at least tonight, even a good example of how this would be so useful is, we're looking at a potential bond ordinance. Teresa indicated that she put placeholders in based on the information she has synthesized. All those options sound great, but I don't know what the other options are.
It's hard to contextualize.
Right, so it's hard to contest, so for example, and I would imagine other council members don't know that, for example, on rec. There's several projects that we wanna do, and so there's the placeholder for $100,000. Well, if we told you some of what those projects are, you might say, wow, those sound really great, but we might have an urgent need in PD and fire that unless Mike tells me, I don't know. So I think that's why it's so important to have this more global view of what the borough's priorities and needs are, so that we can all understand. I think it really will assist us and be a good tool to making better decisions. More important, I shouldn't say better, more informed decisions.
No, I agree. 100%.
So can I have a motion to form the committee?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
I do not want to say.
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Paul,
Yeah.
council members, Kristen Keith,
Yes.
Koch,
No.
McCabe,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yeah.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes. Okay, public comments on the public comment on agenda items, please observe 3 minutes. Do you have any comments from the public either on Zoom or in the room? This is the time when anybody can comment on any of the workshop items that were, or presentation from before, or anything that's on the consent agenda.
We have one member from the, a couple
Really
members.
moderate, and I think it'd probably be simpler, Joe, if we went with the public that's here first and then move to the public that's on Zoom. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, yes, it does.
Name and address, and the floor is yours.
Christine Everhard, 29 Oakland. I'm sorry, but sometimes you have to laugh a little. Okay, so there are multiple people from our road on Zoom right now, as well as some here with me. And when you were speaking about that there is a lot of currently on Ridge Road or Harding, whatever it is, that there's, you know, that people who live there have a lot of different like landscaping, et cetera. And that would be like difficult. I just like to bring up the point though, that they chose to landscape on property that the town has like deeded access to create sidewalks on. So that was their decision to create privacy and what is the right of the town. And it's a 40-mile-an-hour street, as I've stated before, which is the lone 40-mile-an-hour road left in Fairhaven. And there's often branches and trees and shrubbery planted on like in that area that extends out, especially when there's brush that even reaches into the bike lane. So this isn't just about the residents of Oak Lawn Road, it's also about the safety of anyone who is using that property, and actually like anyone who is trying to walk along that area. And I know it's like you can't necessarily see the picture, but one of our residents, Jen Barron, took a picture of a woman trying to walk a dog along the 40-mile-an-hour road. And you can see like the rocks are like almost that these people have landscaped by choice are almost into the bike lane. Like there's really no path for anybody anyone, not just Oak Lawn residents, to walk, not just children, but you know, it's a 40-mile-an-hour road. So we talk about replacing the Gentry's, and I'm not trying to diss the Gentry, like, but that's not a 40-mile-an-hour road. Like, I don't know what you're expecting for me with my, you know, just me as an adult, but also my children, how they're supposed to get to school, crossing into Little Silver and then crossing back into Fairhaven. That's the expectation. It just doesn't really, and we are asking for you know, you really to take this into consideration, put yourself in our shoes as residents of this town to be able to have access to the rest of town in a safe way. And also for those who are bikers all the time, biking down that road. That's a very popular place for these people who practice cycling. And as soon as that brush is out, like, I know that you would like to think that people obey the brush rules, but they don't. And then it's even more dangerous. So that's, and I'm just one person. I know other people have thoughts and feelings, so I'll let the next go.
Thank you.
Rachel Presser, 53 Oakland Road. So basically, we only have one cut through left because people have put up fences. And should there be and that's because the neighbors are so generous and let us cut through their backyard. So should they sell the house, we'll have no cut through left. It's plain and simple. And there are about, what, 15 school children on our street. I'm a kindergarten teacher in town. Everyone makes the school. Our kids, it feels just very disconnected from, our street feels very disconnected. And should there be then they sell a house, put up a fence, it's completely blocked, so plain and simple.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Vanderslice, 38 Oak Lawn Road. I'm an active senior. Do a lot of walking. During the pandemic, I walked every day down to Fairhaven Fields, around town, found a whole lot of neighborhoods in Fairhaven I never knew about. But I always had to go out on Harding Road to do that, to get over to Harrison. I could walk through the university streets, Dartmouth, Princeton, and work my way down to Fairhaven Fields, but I always had to either walk along Harding Road or cross it to walk on the Little Silver side, not crossing on a designated crosswalk because you have to walk along Harding Road to get to the designated crossroad at Harrison. So during the pandemic, there wasn't much traffic. It was doable. Nowadays, I make sure I don't walk during school changing hours because Red Bank regional traffic really builds up on Harding in the morning and especially between 2:40 and 3:10. And of course, now with River Road being worked on, the traffic is greatly increased. So to my opinion, it's hazardous to try to cross Harding. And I would love to see a sidewalk to allow not just the children, but the seniors and other adults who do go out and about. To me, that's one of the wonderful things about Fairhaven as a town is it is a walking town. It's a town where you can walk to the Acme, and I do, etc. I have another comment about the easement, which I don't know anything, I don't understand, but I'm a senior, so if you're thinking of the easement as a way for children on their bikes to get through to Harrison, I would like to use it too. So it would be a fairly public place, and would it be maintained by the town? I don't understand exactly how it works and what it would mean for the homes that are impacted by it. So please consider that because it seems to me it would be available to anyone. But I am for the sidewalk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we turn to Zoom, anybody else in the room? Marty?
Hi, Marty Ever, 33 Hants Road in Fairhaven.
I want to take you back to 2 weeks ago and just ask for, put my request right up front, a reconsideration of the vote that was taken 2 weeks ago.
I think this is good at the borough. If it's not on this,
I thought because you brought up the Hants Road topic on your workshop
Okay.
session, that's the reason I got up
Okay,
here.
okay.
If you want me to wait. for
No,
that,
I just want to make sure we stay on point. We're trying to,
I know you've had Rich give an update on the
Yeah.
Hants Road.
yeah, I just wanted to give the timeline, but, go ahead.
So, okay?
Go ahead.
He's the chair, not me.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. How
Thank
about
you,
yes?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay. So I was just, I'm not an attorney. But it seems to me, being present for the vote that was here 2 weeks ago. A, I think there was a lot of confusion around the vote. B, I think that initially there wasn't going to be a vote, that there wasn't going to be action taken at that meeting initially, then there was. Also, it's just because we were in the audience and with masks, I never heard a second on the motion. So before this proceeds to bid, I would just ask that you go back and review all the necessary protocols for that. And I will also say that I think that there was intimidation present that night that could have affected the vote. So I'm asking for reconsideration of that vote. If the council feels that that's the way they want to go, and again, not an attorney, so I don't know what you can and can't do, but I just think it might be a redo. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary from 326 Sands Road. I was delighted you brought up Robert's Rules of Order because I thought as a point of order, when the vote was taken, since it was split, isn't it inappropriate for the leader of the group to voice his opinion before the vote's taken? Oh, sorry.
So
I'll happily answer
everybody on the governing body has a voice, including the mayor. I'm not the mayor, I'm just the borough council president, but the sitting mayor that was here at the time could voice his opinion. He was not eligible to vote unless there was a split in the vote. So generally speaking, anybody who's on the governing body can voice their opinion. That's what we've done historically. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I mean, the vote was procedurally taken, it was accurate. You got the roll call right, Allison?
There was a motion, there was a second, and then there was a roll call. The mayor broke the tie.
Yeah, he's on. Say it.
Okay, but he said initially before the vote, if there's a tie, this is how I'm gonna vote. So that's, I mean.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Elected officials do that in the newspaper all the time, no comment.
Hi, John Brill, 94 Linden Drive. Mr. Chairman, can I ask about the status of the ordinance that was passed a while ago? I'll ask it.
Is it on here or is this a good as a
No,
borough
no.
thing? I guess at 9:15 I'll allow it. I know you may want to leave, you may not want to sit through till wait till the good as a borough, but
Okay, but it was-
sure.
Because there was for the four-way stop to be put at Kent and Linden.
Yes,
And I just want to know what's the time frame for putting that in. Or is it-
that would be the timeframe.
What do you think?
Rich could probably speak to it. But I think
We
the ordinance-
recently approved that ordinance,
Right.
maybe a meeting or two ago.
Yes.
So I know the chief of police met with my streets foreman, we put a word together. purchase work and it's not. And one location is the last side.
Yes, I was just.
Materials are gonna be ordered and we also have to call for the mark out and re-dig and all that, so.
All right, great, that's good. One other thing, about the green team, if I heard correctly, there's an environmental defense fellow who was on this team, who's a subject matter expert in environmental matters.
Yes,
Is that true? Okay. Could I ask that this environmental expert sort of give advice and counsel to the town concerning the tracking of soils coming in from outside the town, being tested and verified as we put onto residential lots, especially if it's over the 10 cubic yard limit.
Yep. So the fellow is mostly about like sustainability and she's no longer working for us anymore. It was just a fellowship over the summer where Sustainable Jersey basically pays for her to consult with different governing bodies. So she mostly advises with like energy tracking and carbon footprints and
Not necessarily EPA.
yeah, not necessarily, yeah, exactly.
That's what that part.
Can I ask you, do you have, are you driving somewhere with that? Did you want to maybe bring that to the environmental committee? What's the nature of, I'm just trying to understand.
The nature is a number of lots in the house in fact, I think 38 Spruce, they have put in quite a few truckloads of soil. But my concern is about there's going to be a family there with 3 children. Where did they get the soil from? Is it safe? Is it a lot of soil? So is there, right now the ordinances speak of being approved if it's over 10 cubic yards, but I think we need to consider more than that. This is New Jersey, where they get the soil.
Yeah.
Simple as that, yeah.
That's a worthy thing. Maybe you want to take that back to the environmental commission?
Yes,
Okay,
that would be good.
Okay, thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you.
Right, well,
Do we have any other participants in the public? And then Joe, do we, Teresa? Do you-
Joe, do you want to,
Yeah, I can, I'll bring in as a panelist, even though the council won't see them. But for the record on video, they'll be here. I'm going to bring in Christy Hoey. First, Kristen Hoey, I'm sorry. Kristen, you're in. You might want to start your video and audio. Yes, yep, you're good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. My name is Kristen Helly. I live at 268 Dartmouth in Fairhaven. My family and I have been here for 2 years. We absolutely love the community. We think the community has a tremendous amount of opportunity ahead of itself. And to that end, I'm very interested in getting to know more about how funds are allocated specifically for Parks and Rec. By way of background, I'm very active in the community as a coach for many of the recreation sports, and just recently this year took on the responsibility of being the head coach for one of the boys baseball teams. And I've been really excited and encouraged by the enthusiasm the town has, not only for rec sports, but for baseball in particular. And so I would really like to take this on and learn a little bit more about how funding is allocated, and then potentially start, whether it be a private campaign or serve as an ambassador to sort of march this forward. Granted, it may take some time. I'm really interested in learning more about how funds are allocated.
Thank you.
should we answer the
I
question?
think that's a question.
Oh,
She wants to know how funds are allocated
in general,
for rec.
It was specific.
oh, for
to
rec, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I thought it was that she just wanted to learn more about it, but, go ahead, would you like to tackle that?
Oh, you're looking at me.
Betsy, would you like to tackle that? I mean,
I'm glad to, Teresa, you can.
Actually, Teresa.
It would depend on the project and what it's tied to. Whether it was something that we did in the small term and the governing body funded through their bond, their pay-as-you-go capital, or whether or not it was tied to a larger project, like some of our Monmouth County Open Space grants, where we did the tennis courts, or when we put in the Sandy Buffer project, or when we redid the fields. I'm gonna say we redid the Fairhaven for about 8 years ago, give or take, so, yeah.
2013.
Yeah, so it would, yeah, through that 8 years ago. So basically fundamentally, those projects are, queued up by the governing body and ultimately funded by the governing body in a process not dissimilar to what we're talking about tonight, in a bond ordinance that's sometimes tied to a grant and sometimes not, and or budgeted capital. If tomorrow the governing body, the next meeting, the governing body decided that they wanted to put the, so much money aside to put in new playground equipment at the community center field, which is something that rec committee talked about. The governing body could put that purchase authorization on the agenda and go ahead and fund it with budget capital money that we have already allocated.
Teresa, just to clarify that point, for rec specifically, there would be 3 potential sources of funding. One would be a grant, which is something we would apply for a specific project the governing body was looking to pursue. The second would be pay-as-you-go capital, which is every year annually in our budget, we typically allocate $215,000, and then usually it's done for smaller projects. We allocate those funds or authorize those funds, and then the bond ordinance is really for capital projects that have a life beyond a year, a longer term life, such as playground equipment, building a baseball field, that sort of thing. So those are the, they get funded. There's no set budgetary amount or allocation for any specific, for a capital type project like rec every single year.
Well, capital, it has to be 5 years life and over $5,000 for one. And then there's also money in your current fund budget for various things in departmentally. And once something gets built, for argument's sake, like a baseball field, then it moves from being a capital project to being a maintenance. It has to go into your current fund budget. And a lot of what you'll see, the governing body have to reckon with is that the more projects you build, the more fields you build, the more sidewalks you put in, all of that moves your maintenance budget higher, just based on the fact of other capital expenditures.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. We have more, I can't tell.
We do. I'm going to move Kristen back over to.
Let's go. He'll move Kristen back over and he'll bring someone else
I
in.
did, and now Ruth Blazer is going to come over, but maybe not. Let's see, Ruth, you can unmute. Ruth, are you there? Ruth, if
Hi
you
there.
can- Oh, yeah, you are. Good.
Here I are. I am just pleased to hear a couple of the council members admit that Fairhaven is a small town. And I love the idea of having a strategic overview of what's going on. However, if people went to the council meetings, they would have a pretty good idea of what's going on. We've got to have more public participation. And if they want, go to the planning board meetings, go to the zoning board meetings, and you have a pretty good idea of what's going on in town and where it stands, because our boards and our unpaid volunteer board members are fantastic. We have a wonderful town, a lot of talented people, a lot of people with ability, and the more that they sit in those chairs and listen to what's going on, the better the town will be. I do have one comment, however, that perhaps we should sharpen our pencils a little more when we spend money or go for bond ordinances. I'm a little distressed on the DPW and municipal building plans. The fact that it just sounds so much easier to just roll over the debt that we are coming to the end of. It would be far better, I think, if they started with a zero balance and had to go to the resident taxpayers and justify how we're spending these millions of dollars, because I believe it could be done less expensively. And I'd like to see more resident accessibility in these buildings. We're spending this much money. They should be able to access Wi-Fi as an aside, fortunately, the Red Bank Library, as a matter of fact, has now upgraded its tech. And you can sit outside the building and use their Wi-Fi 24/7. And I think Fairhaven should be that kind of a town where everything is accessible to the residents. Other than that, oh, and thank you, Councilman Rodriguez, for mentioning Schwenker's Pond. I was beginning to think that this was going to be a forgotten entity, that and McCarter, because they're ongoing. They come every year. And if we're going to plan for a hot next summer, it's time to start now on remedies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Point of order, who was that?
Ruth Blazer, she said her name, yeah.
Sorry, a nightmare.
Three hands.
The next one coming in is Miss McManus, I believe.
Hello.
Please unmute.
Hi. Am I there?
Yes, you are. You're all good.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Janechi McManus. My address is 30 Oak Lawn Road, and I'm a lifelong resident of Fairhaven. My parents were original owners on the street on Oak Lawn Road, raising 3 children and sending them to public schools. I moved onto the street 23 years ago, raised 2 children and sent them to the public schools. So as my neighbors were saying, when you exit the street, whether you're a pedestrian, a runner, or a bicyclist, you make a left-hand turn if your plan is to go to the schools or to go into town. You make a left-hand turn into oncoming traffic that's going 40 miles an hour. And this traffic, if you're going around between the hours of 2 and 4, most of the traffic is, I would assume, high schoolers driving. So, you know, we've all sent our kids into this oncoming traffic, this oncoming 40-mile-an-hour traffic. And basically, this community was established in the 1950s, and the safety of the pedestrians and the bicyclists have been overlooked and neglected since the 1950s. Additionally, as we heard tonight, the borough is spending a lot of time discussing the construction of sidewalks in a neighborhood that doesn't want them and doesn't need them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have 2 more, Joe?
Joe, where are we with the people in queue?
Yep, Kathleen Fedaro's coming in. She should be on. If she can unmute, you'll have her momentarily. And there's one other behind her.
Hi, oops, let me get my video.
There you go.
There I am. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm Kathleen Fodorero. I live at 46 Oak Lawn. I just wanted to point out a few things. I appreciate everyone's comments, you know, for the other projects that you are prioritizing. However, we do have, as has been stated, 15 children on this road. Some of them are younger and some are teenagers. The teenagers have to get to their bus stop, which is on Harrison and Harvard. And so for them to get to a bus stop, they have to cross Ridge Road 2 times to get there. So that's not a safe pathway to school. Further, I have 2 labs that are quite big, and so I have to walk them distances, and it's very nerve-wracking to cross this road with all of the traffic. It's going so quickly and no one stops for you. So sometimes I try to walk into traffic on the side, you know, on the northbound side, where, as we've said, there's brush in the road, there's the big rocks that you're tripping over, and it doesn't feel safe. It really doesn't. And again, everyone loves to walk in this town. We love to get over to Fairhaven Fields, walk to Acme, wherever, but it would be nice to not have to feel so nervous to do it every time we do it. The other issue, just, I understand the idea of a little path, which sounds very nice, but you would be disrupting 6 families, whereas if we just did the sidewalk, it's just 3. So I think that needs to be considered. Sweetie, do you have anything to say? No. It's really that, I just really hope that, and again, I know there are bumpy sidewalks in the Gentry, and the ones on Hants that you want to put in, but that's not safety the way it is here. This truly is taking your life in your hands to try and just get into town. So I hope you will all consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got one last one. Sonia Trombino coming. Well, actually, I got 2 more, but Sonia Trombino's coming in. If she can unmute and put video on, you're in.
Hey guys, Sonia Trombino, 10 Brookside Farm Road. I just had a question about the plastic bag ban. I was at Acme tonight and I saw that they are now using paper bags. So was that ban, put into place? And is that a townwide thing or is that something that just Acme is doing? Because I don't remember hearing any communication about it.
It's
Is it under green team?
not really.
Yeah, yeah.
I think this one, if we can keep this one super quick, like a minute or less, this is really good to the borough, but I'll let Alini respond quickly.
Yes, my understanding is that Allison has sent, and Allison, please confirm that you sent a letter to Acme asking them to reinstitute the plastic bag ban. So
Based on your discussion at the last meeting, Christie prepared the letter, got the list from Betty Ann and sent it out. Yep.
So thank you. It seems like they moved on it pretty much immediately after our request. So I have asked Teresa to please coordinate a communication to be put out. Teresa, tomorrow if possible, just to confirm maybe with Acme what they're doing and just make sure that our residents know that we are reinstituting that plastic bag ban, which was in place, but it was disrupted by the pandemic.
Okay.
Is just one more question. Is it just for Acme or is it all of, okay.
No.
It's all businesses. We send
Okay,
out-
so, yeah, and that was just my question, if all businesses have been notified or if it was just sent to Acme.
Sent to all businesses. That included the whole plastic straws to go to paper straws with a copy of the ordinance so that they can refer back to it.
Okay. And you'll be communicating that soon?
That has been communicated. We can brief on that at the next meeting.
No, I mean to the public.
I'm asking the public because the concern is that people are going to Acme and they haven't brought their bags with them.
If they have reusable bags.
Exactly, so I think that,
Why don't
I think the
we-
We'll
request
send
is
it out in a
that,
positive spin to
Yeah.
the residents.
We
as
put
part of our
something else.
constant I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But we will send it out. I've got it right on my list here.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Allison and Teresa for following up on that. I'm glad to see that it's in place now.
I got my name call on Friday. And we really do pay attention when you tell us to do something, believe it or not.
Thank you for that.
Do we have one more caller or
Yep,
multiple?
Yep, Jen Barron is coming in. She can unmute and put on video. We'll be all set.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to piggyback off of Kathleen Federaro. My name is Jen Barron. I live at 47 Oaklawn Road. And I love all of the ideas that you are trying to, present and troubleshoot regarding the sidewalk on Harding Road from Oak Lawn or Prospect down to Harrison. And I just wanted to share with you a recent experience from September 2nd at 3:10 p.m. School hadn't started, but it was right around the time that school would have let out. There was a woman walking by. She was not a resident of Oak Lawn Road. I don't know where she lives. And she was walking her dog. I was driving south on Harrison toward Harding to make a right onto Harding to drive to my house on Oak Lawn Road. And I could have turned. It was free for me, but it was not free for her. And I sat there and I watched her try to cross the road for several minutes. No one stopped for her. Eventually she gave up and she started walking down Harding Road. And I have a picture of her. She's like narrowly walking on the side of Harding Road. She can't walk in the bike lane because she could be hit by a bicyclist. And there are a line of cars coming down. So I just wanted to reiterate why we feel it's so important to install sidewalks on Harding Road. Thank you.
Much appreciated. We're gonna adjourn for 5 minutes. We will come back at 9:42.
On the stop recording. Pause it. Pause it, yeah, finish.
Okay, approval of minutes. I have a motion for September 8th, 13th, regular and 13th executive. Please.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Keith,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McCabe.
Yes.
McHugh.
Yes.
Barnett.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes. Okay. Old business hearing and adoption of ordinance, capital bond ordinance. 2021-12 motion to open, to offer, open, sorry, open.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Any comments? This is a hearing, so. any
Public
comments?
hearing, does the public like to speak, or any member on Zoom would like to speak? Raise your hand.
My only question is, I want to confirm that even though we authorize these funds to be released for capital, we still have to authorize each expenditure within the 215.
Yes, they will come back to the governing body for purchase authorization.
Okay, this is just moving the money, basically. This is an
Yes,
authorization.
it's allowing the CFO to set up into a capital ordinance, which runs year to year to year. So if you don't spend the funds from 2021, they're still available next year and the year after, whenever the governing body decides to use it.
And how many years does that go for?
Correct? Until you expend the funds.
But the amounts can be changed and they don't have to be used, correct?
You need a further resolution to spend the money.
Okay.
So you can, whatever that resolution says, it says.
You see it, each one that says, A, B, C, D, as to be necessary by the governing body to determine is that's, in other words, we actually added that wording in there, so you'll make a further, just like any one of these other ones that we had up in the spreadsheet, they were done by further purchase authorization of the governing body. It wouldn't be me deciding to spend $100,000 in a park, in other words, I
Right.
wouldn't sign that purchase order.
Right, and that money won't be borrowed until it's.
It's not borrowed, this is your budgeted capital. You've already, that money's already been allocated and raised in this year's budget.
Okay, it's already out there.
So this ordinance, if adopted, will be advertised Thursday. Then there's a 20-day stop period where anybody can speak up to it. If nobody speaks, then I certify that ordinance to our bond council and we can go from there.
Great. Joe, is there anybody from the public with their hand raised? I mean, on Zoom?
I don't see anybody, no.
No, sir.
Okay. Motion to close the hearing.
Motion.
Okay. Motion to offer. Everybody's getting quiet all of a sudden. Roll call, please. Let's get the energy back.
Yes.
Yes.
McLean.
Yes.
Yes.
Wherever you go.
Wait, Neff, you said yes to that?
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes, thank you. All right, do with the wave, okay. New business, council committee reports, Councilwoman at Finance, please.
We are in the process of setting up a number of meetings now for October. We're gonna be meeting with department heads, and Teresa and I are coordinating setting up some of those meetings, and the finance committee will be working on the plan to look out 2 to 3 years in our budget going forward. So we're picking up on that project this fall.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's pretty much it.
Councilwoman Christner Keefe, personnel, please.
Personnel, we do have on the consent agenda some salary adjustments for various part-time and non-aligned for employees. And although related to personnel, we will not chiefly or only be responsible for it, our upcoming contract negotiations. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Councilwoman Koch, for planning, zoning, parks, recreation, and communications, please.
So our next zoning board meeting is scheduled for October 7th. It will be a Zoom meeting, but our next planning board meeting is scheduled for October 19th. That is an in-person meeting. Our September meeting was also in person for the planning board. In terms of parks and recreation, all I have for that is our Halloween festivities are scheduled for Sunday, October 24th at 3 o'clock at Sportsman's Field. There'll be a Halloween egg hunt. And then at 3:30, the parade will commence, go down Hants Road, up River Road to the firehouse. And they'll be judging and prizes for different categories of costumes. And communications, I think everyone's doing a pretty good job. So we're good.
Thank you. Councilman McHugh for police, fire, OEM, engineering, and DPW.
Sure, so for police, fire, OEM, perhaps maybe the greatest update with OEM is that, again, numbers for COVID-19 are starting to be reported again. They are private. I'm not privy to that information, but as far as tracking, I think the state legislators allowed, even though we're not in the state of emergency anymore, we people in like our director of OEM, chief of police, his assistant, have access to those numbers again for tracking purposes. So that's a good thing. I won't be reporting numbers anymore, but we're back to knowing townwide specifics, so they can just watch the trends with that. Engineering DPW, I think we've talked a lot about that. Maybe I'll just reiterate the time frame for the Hants Road project. We have to advertise by 10/21, authorize the bid to go out to bid on 10/12 and award the bid by November 8th or call a special meeting. Unless, of course, you just want to do the do nothing approach, which is an option, but if we award the bid by 11/8 or call a special meeting. The brush grind, if anyone's wondering about that, the purchase order did go out last week to Atlantic. As far as earlier today, and feel free to update this, Teresa, but we have not got
I don't have a date yet.
a date yet set by them. But one of the advantages we're working with this smaller company is the owner is available always, personal relationship with their engineering department. So when that comes back, we're looking probably the middle of October now. 2 weeks timeframe, something like that.
Maybe the end, we'll see. what
Maybe
they-
towards the end, but at least we're out of the initial going back to school, all that, so the children will have, the routine down and what have you, and we can, hold them during those times when kids are riding around on their bikes, so. A lot more control, smaller trucks, and so when that comes out, shouldn't be too much of an impact, hopefully, on the local community. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'll take borough facilities. We are actually gonna pull 2021-216 from the consent agenda.
From the agenda in its entirety.
From the agenda, period, full stop. There was a lot of conversations that had led up to the recommendation, and more information came to light, and no longer going to push forward with this specific proposal and award of proposal to Epic Management. We will reconvene that conversation with the facilities committee for a owner agent, and then come back to the council with another recommendation. As it relates to technology, we're advancing technology discussions relative to the police department and DPW. And I also believe there is some technology going on relative to Bicentennial Hall. So those conversations are ongoing and making advancements there. And I believe we'll have a meeting in the next week or so of the facilities committee. We offered to allow the green team, as mentioned earlier in this agenda, to participate, not only for the purpose of the program that they had mentioned earlier, but also getting a bit more involved in just generally the strategic outlook going forward for facilities. So we'll be having participants in a joint session between facilities and the green team. So that concludes my report.
Can I ask a question, please? Okay, thank you. In regards to 2021-216, is there a conversation, or maybe the next meeting you just mentioned will offer conversation? Will there be opportunity for RFPs for this, or because I just remember with architectural, we sent that out for RFPs, and these are my questions prior to your comments in regards to pulling it. Just wondering what the process was.
Yeah, we had gone out and gotten 2 proposals.
Yep. Actually tried to get the third, but
yeah.
they would be declined.
And the third one declined.
Okay.
We're gonna probably kick off that same process again.
Okay.
After further review, we decided not to go forward with that, and we need more information and more conversations around that, and probably additional bids.
Okay, perfect. And then this brings us back to our conversation in regards to getting the committees together when it comes to that, to see the involvement of the planning committee. Were they involved in any of this at the beginning, or any of this recommendation here?
When you say any of
Planning
this,
board, I'm sorry, the planning board, or, so that's where I'm trying to make the link between committee and some of the council agenda items. Was this, prior to being pulled, was any of this shared, or was there recommendations or any type of input from the planning board?
planning
Or
board
is that appropriate for it to ask? So,
probably wouldn't get involved in a project manager decision.
okay, facilities committee,
Yeah, facilities and the council.
facilities, so it was facilities?
Yeah.
They were included in this? They were?
Yes, and some of the folks that were brought forward were recommended by facilities committee members who, and just to give a flavor for who the facility committee's members are, there's architects, there's engineers, there's real estate developers who manage REITs and that kind of stuff. So there's tremendous local expertise that contributes to the committee. Okay, moving on, consent agenda. Any comments on the remaining 4 items? And if not, can I have a motion?
I motion that we accept the consent agenda as shown with the exception of 216.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ooh, that was close. Roll call, please.
Council members, Commissioner Reed.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
McCabe.
Yes.
McHugh.
Yes.
Nat.
Yes.
Reddick.
Yes. Okay. Department reports, August 2021 Municipal Court Police Department budget status. There's a packet that everybody has. Motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion open, go to the Borough.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the audience? We have one.
Hi, Tracy Cole, 123 Grand Ave. First, I just want to say, awesome job getting a hybrid council meeting launched. People were tuned in tonight. I could hear everybody really clearly. I don't like to go to a council meeting without a roof, so we got a roof. That's just really great. I don't know how it all happened. It felt a little magical. I'm just glad it happened. So thank you. I wanted to add, I so appreciate all the conversation around strategic planning, some of these were dashboards, some of these were visioning, and they're not all interchangeable, I know that, but I would just say, I think it's really, really wonderful to have the conversation. And the visioning work that I've been part of in the past, and I think Betsy was trying to get at this, that visioning work is best done with the community as a whole. Partially, well, in big part because you want those decisions, findings, thoughts, and ideas to stand the test of time. And someone was talking about it, council members come and go, everyone takes a turn, and so it changes. And the visioning decisions don't change, they shouldn't change. Those are things that are usually long range and they're guiding. And it really is a very fun process, galvanizes a community if you include everyone in it. Anyone who wants to participate, some people won't, but in Fairhaven, I think you would get a lot of participation. And then you create a shared vision, one that everyone can get and walk around and understand what's the direction for Fairhaven. So just wanted to food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for articulating that so well. I was trying to get to that point of the shared vision. Thank you.
Sarah Betty, 27 Paris. I want to echo what Tracy just said and thank Councilwoman Knapp and others who work on the strategic committee idea. I love it. I like the spirit of the information gathering, the prioritizing multiple inputs, community involvement, all of these things. But the one kind of concern I have,
It's hard to hear, I'm checking if
yeah,
either remove your mask maybe
all
a
right.
little bit or speak a little louder.
I'll talk a little louder. I'll try. I've been told that before. The one concern I have in hearing all of that, it's all very positive. I just, in the spirit of Councilwoman McCabe and kicking a dead horse, I want to make sure that we think about all of those things when you are pressed to make a decision by October 12th about the sidewalks plans on Harrison Grange. That, regardless of what the decision is, regardless of what the options are, I still feel like I haven't heard all of the things that I would like to hear being part of that decision, right? Traffic, pedestrians, bicycles, cars, wheelchairs, walkers, who's going to the park, how many kids down there, how many kids live below or above Lewis Point Road, who go to school. Have there been any accidents? Do sidewalks actually help prevent the accidents? Does the bike lane help prevent accidents? All of these things that I just feel like all we're going on, or all you are going on between now and October 12th, it's still the base maps, which we were told today are not completed. I want to remind the council that in loving the idea of the strategic planning process, that we also think about it in terms of these projects and programs. And I think that that's part of why this came up. But I do feel this pressure of being able to make a decision in a very short amount of time with a lot of that information that I believe is still needed.
Thank you. Do we have any good of the borough from the public on Zoom?
Yes, we do. I got Melissa Nachesney coming in. Melissa, if you'll unmute and then put video, you're good to go. Zoom to Melissa. Melissa, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you go.
Hello?
Yep, there you go.
There I am. My name's Melissa Nachesney. I'm at 107 Park Lane. With the new council and 2 seats up in November, will the issue of reducing taxes ever be mentioned? It has not been since Mike Halfacre was mayor. That is the last time I've ever heard about the reduction of taxes, and that was 10 years ago.
Anybody want to tackle that?
Chris, how about you?
It's I had conversations with Mike Halfacre when I first joined the council in February of 2017. And reason why I called him was I said, what's the secret? What's the magic? What can we do to reduce taxes, reduce the tax load? You know, he said that he had found a number of things and was able to cut the budget down to the bone. And he said, I don't know that there's anything left free to cut when we have cost of living adjustments for police officers, we have cost of living adjustments for DPW workers and staff. And though he was successful in reducing a number of line items, you know, it began to drift back up because of inflation and cost of living. I don't know that we've added a heck of a lot more to what we do within the borough, though. You know, I wasn't on the council 10 years ago. Would I like to cut taxes in half? Yeah, of course. Though we do have some contractual constraints. And we've also got realities of what I think is going to be 6% inflation this year. So the decisions for the council, and that's for all 6 of us to make, is do we want to cut services? Do we want to cut staff? That is one way to reduce costs in town. You know, that's for 6 people to decide. I don't know that we're overstaffed. I think that the services that the people in town get from the police, from the DPW, from our administrative staff is generally appreciated. They work hard, whether it's the library or you know, answering the phone at Borough Hall. So yeah, I would desire a tax cut personally. I think we all would. You know, I think we can do the best that we can to look at finding ways to, just like Mayor Halfacre had done in the past. So I think we've got a number of constraints that we have to adhere to, and some contracts that we're about to go into negotiations on. So
little by little.
else want to talk about that?
If I may, Councilman, I'll just add that the other areas that you might want to explore for the reduction of taxes would also be at the Board of Ed level, both within Fairhaven at RFH, as well as with your legislative district senators and assembly people as well. My understanding is that Monmouth County is the one county that is subject to reassessment every single year. And I believe that that impacts our taxes directly because it impacts the available funding. So again, I think there are other avenues to pursue. Certainly, I know that this council takes the budget and the way that the budget runs very seriously. I know myself, 2 years ago, was a huge advocate for trying to reduce the budget in terms of the capital that we were spending. Spent a lot of time talking about that. You know, this year, Councilman Koch was working to try and reduce the budget. It's extremely difficult. And hopefully with more of the strategic planning involved and more of that longer view of what we're trying to accomplish and understanding what the shared community goals are, we'll be able to tackle the projects that are the most important priorities in Fairhaven and streamline some of those tax dollars. But reducing taxes, I don't know. It's kind of a loaded question too, because you have you can only raise your budget so much every year within certain areas. And so for us to go outside of that, there has to be a special ordinance for an approval for that. So there's many pieces of the puzzle. And it also is dependent on the assessed value of properties and how that may impact the tax rate. So it's a pretty complicated discussion point. I hear you. I think we all want our taxes to go down dollars.
I understand, but
Dollar-wise reduction is a super complicated math formula that I wouldn't even begin to understand.
Did you guys still hear me?
Can't hear you.
Yeah, Melissa, you're low.
Can you hear me?
Nope,
I have one more question.
there you go.
I can hear you.
Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I realize that it's a complicated issue, but with revenues that have increased over the years, I don't know how many times over, it should at least be something that is in the beginning embryonic stages of discussion. And I guarantee you, if you at least start to discuss it, you'll make people feel a lot better. That's what Mark Halfaker did. He didn't make huge sweeping adjustments to the budget. He talked about the budget and cutting it and did it on fiscal prudency. And I think that's what a lot of people would like to hear. Also, one last question. You were going to read the names of those who are proposed for mayor. Did I miss it?
No, we received the letter today. We're going to address that at the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Joe, do we have any other go to the borough?
Yeah, there's one, Ruth Blazer coming back over.
Hello, Ruth.
Takes a while to push these buttons. Observed something the other day, our brush pickup team. Man, there were a lot, considering it's only September, there were a lot of leaves and branches around town at the curb. I won't even go into the fact that some of the people were definitely off their schedule. But the point being, I was watching them pick up this huge amount of brush. And a friend was there with me, Susan O'Brien, and she said, why doesn't the borough get a truck like the landscapers have? If the landscapers can afford a chipper truck, why can't we? And just chip them on site. When it's full, empty it, come back. Rather than going through all these machinations of getting bids and contractors and all this stuff. The town used to pretty much take care of its own stuff. It used to pick up its own garbage. And my father used to say, never give up your options. Because the minute you start selling off your equipment and depending on other people to do things for you, you lose control. So I'm just suggesting we, little by little, get back into doing our own thing and take personal responsibility for what's going on in town. And I think a chipper would be the best way to start. And we could use the chips on the trails, we could use the chips around town, we could give them out to the residents for their gardens. It's a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Any other good of the borough on Zoom? Or in the public here, on the council?
I'll just say that I
Sure.
really love the owl. I think it's fantastic, and thank you for coordinating that, Councilman Rodriguez and Teresa. One other item for good of the borough, as the vice chair of the rec committee, I know the rec committee was hoping to have some sort of directional at the next meeting, which is next week, concerning the whether or not it may be beneficiary of some of the capital funds. And I realize we have tabled this until the next meeting. The rec committee has a number of projects that have been in queue sort of since January. One, we are waiting to hear back on a grant award. The other is a project that was previously authorized by the borough until there was a misunderstanding about the funds available. A group was looking to essentially donate $50,000 to Fairhaven in pursuits of a multi-purpose wall at Fairhaven Fields. And when prevailing wage came into play and they were unable to donate the materials and the labor to install it, and then COVID hit, things kind of fell apart. There was a reconnection on that project. The rec committee's interested in pursuing it, but there's a financial gap. And depending on how several things shake out, the financial gap could be as little as $5,000, or it could be as great as $30,000. And so the rec committee was hoping to have some directional by next week's meeting. And I realize we don't have it, but I just want to share that with you because, at least from my perspective in the rec committee, it feels that we've been kind of spinning our wheels trying to make decisions. And this becomes now a chicken and an egg situation of, we don't have enough money. Should we ask for the money? Do we want to approve the project without the money? Or, you know, which one wants to go first? And so I leave you with that. And I will add too, that one of the other pieces of the rec funding needs relate to community center fields, which recently lost the second slide. So now there are 0 slides there. Did I miss anything on that, Councilman Couch?
No, we're still waiting to hear about donations, whether or not they can be accepted, right? The donations of concrete.
So I did get an answer on that. So one of the pieces of the puzzle was that they had a connection with a concrete supplier that would significantly, well, the first thing we did, I'll back up, Engineer Gardella was able to tweak 2 items in the proposed engineering plan, removing the turf and using more of the stone dust material, took it down about $30,000. So that was a big help. And then the group who was donating the $50,000 that they raised for this project is able to source concrete at a reduced cost. I've spoken, the question is whether or not we can put the project out to bid and ask that whoever the contractor is accept a donated material. And the answer is, we can put it out to bid like that, but on the advice of council, we should put it out to bid both with that as an option or that they supply it. Because a specific contractor may not want to accept somebody else's material that they're unfamiliar with. But to the extent we could share what the concrete supplier's name was, that would be helpful, because if it's a common, concrete supply company, might not be an issue. Unfortunately, what had happened at the initiation of this project was that a similar project had happened at RFH, and the Board of Ed was able to accept those donated labor and materials, and they just had to authorize the installation of this thing at this location. And so the initial authorization for this project at at Fairhaven Borough level was back in 2018, if memory serves me. And so now this group is still hoping to donate these funds to the borough. But again, it would require some additional funding of a floating amount depending on how the bid would go out and come back.
I just want to, I can make two clarifications. One, when the committee presented the concept of a lacrosse wall to the council, it was presented to us as being paid in full by the actual group of students that were interested in building the lacrosse wall at Fairhaven Fields. As it turned out, they weren't aware of prevailing wages, so the amount of money that they thought they had, they didn't have. And so they asked the borough to compensate by providing the additional funding to complete the wall. The wall was presented to us as a lacrosse wall. It was not presented as a multi-purpose wall. Somehow that lacrosse wall has now morphed into a multi-purpose wall. So I just want to clarify the distinction. Thank you.
I also think it's important for the governing body to realize that these plans were not drawn by the borough engineer. These plans were drawn by Spiesel architects as part of the Long Live Blacks relationship with them, and what went on between them as far as being paid. But this was not a project that the borough is prepared to go out to bid on through the borough engineer. It would make more sense to let Spiesel Architectural complete the bid package and go out to bid. Rich's modifications were simply just going into a list of what they had listed to cost and deducting out certain things. You know, if we certainly could prioritize it and turn it over to the borough engineer, but then you have to ask yourself where it fits in with the other projects that the borough engineer is already working on. And at the time, that was the reason why the governing body, you know, wanted to be sure that they understood that it was, you know, a project that they were going to use their professionals for, because we didn't have, from a timing perspective, they didn't want to put this to the top of the list of things they want to dedicate borough resources for. But there's been, there's plans out there, they're fully baked and they can make some changes to them, but they wouldn't be a lot to get that out to bid through the original Spiesel.
Can I ask a question about rec? So about community fields, the one slide I think was lost in a storm. I don't remember if it was a name storm or not. And then wasn't replaced. And this is before I was on, but I'm not sure if there's an insurance fund or some sort of savings for this kind of stuff. And then, you know, the other slide just went down. Like, is there, what if the swing breaks, right? What if something, if some kids come by and steal all the bases, I don't know, the baseball, like, is there money available for when stuff breaks? It's used, or parts are certainly used.
There's plenty available in your current fund budget for park maintenance, but if you're talking about a larger expenditure that would be capital in nature, then we would use capital funds for it. That one slide came down, and when a tree came down and hit it,
Yep.
I don't remember if it was ready to a storm or not, where the tree just came out. I don't recall. And then this one just cracked from wear and time. But if the governing body wants to buy a new piece of equipment for the community center fields, you certainly have, funds available to do so.
Is there a recommendation from the rec committee on repurchasing these two slides?
Definitely, I think,
Well, the slides can't be replaced.
no, they can't, they have to be.
You have to get a new piece of equipment there. But we certainly could.
There is a consensus with the recreation committee, because so many people use the baseball field. It does get a lot of use by the residents, and that park needs some work. That park definitely needs some work.
And I think that was already addressed in the bond ordinance to a certain degree.
Well, so it's two separate things. You know, the committee has initiatives, and this goes back to the whole strategic plan, it's tying in during I said, that at the beginning of the year, the committee had some ideas about what it wanted to do, and if it had money available to it, how it wanted to spend that money. And so the rec committee does get some, or rec is allocated some money through the community appeals and then capital, right? We talked about the three ways that we achieve capital before. And so we have those projects we've been looking at. One is of like bike playground over on Carter Park. The other is the multi-purpose wall that is in many respects similar to like playground in the sense that there may be grant monies available. Whereas, the multi-purpose wall, there's literally money sitting in a bank account waiting for us to authorize it. But then when things come up like this slide, the community center field, a serious concern. We want our children to have a playground to go to there. And, there's been discussion among the rec committee about a longer 5-year plan of when each playground will reach its, life. They do become brittle, they do reach a point where a slide breaks. And so having that plan and mapping it out, and so staggering them in an appropriate way such that when one is about to deteriorate, the next one is still in good shape. So we're not paying for 3 new playgrounds at once, like we are with our borough facilities. So, I think it's important considerations. I think the rec committee would like to think about replacing that playground. I don't think that we've had an opportunity to have a meeting since that slide most recently went down. Right, so that I think is on the agenda. I know one of our committee members, Tina, has worked very hard to put together some figures to try and figure out, can we replace that? What will it cost us? Can we get it installed before the ground freezes? Things like that. So that's going to be discussed and shared. I would expect the next rec committee meeting. This is my first year on rec committee, and I would say it's very difficult to feel like you're accomplishing much of anything when you don't know what money is or isn't available to you, or what will be available to you. And obviously these things can be floating, and you can't make these decisions in a vacuum, and the budget isn't done until June, and all these various pieces of the puzzle. But I think having some more strategic thought and overview would be helpful to committees in the planning process and how to pursue different initiatives.
Great. Okay, on that note, if we have no other.
We have a raised hand.
We have a raised.
Yep. I'm gonna bring in D. Fernandez. If you'd unmute and turn video on, you're good to go. There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi,
Yes.
So this is Dennis, 75 Cedar Avenue. And I just wanted to touch upon what was just mentioned regarding the multi-purpose wall. So the first question is, now, is it a multi-purpose wall or is it a lacrosse wall? And a follow-up to that would be, not a question, but more, since borough land is being used for the wall, and if it is going to be only a lacrosse wall, why not spend whatever amount? I don't know the amount, maybe discuss it or whatever needs to be done, but spend a little bit more and make it a truly multi-purpose wall so that it's accessible to like a vast majority of people rather than just for a specific sport.
So is it a lacrosse wall, or is it and if it's multi-purpose, what sports can be played on? It's probably the best.
You know what, it goes back and forth. It depends upon who's presenting the wall.
Okay.
So we don't really have a consensus on, is it multi-purpose or is it a lacrosse wall? One suggestion was, if it is a multi-purpose wall, then we should be able to use both sides of the wall, and maybe it's in the wrong place. We would have to find a different place to install it. So you got to use both sides of the wall. It can't be a multi-purpose wall in the sense that 2 different sports are using it at the same time. And then the problem becomes which sport gets to use it if you both show up at the same time. So is it like tennis courts where you have to sign up and register to use it? So there are some issues that we really have to work through, depending upon whether we're going to call it a multi-purpose or a lacrosse wall. But the bottom line is the council didn't even know about a lacrosse wall until this group of students, very passionate about their lacrosse wall, approached us and offered to pay for the entire wall.
Okay, question. Maybe you guys can answer. This. Does it matter what the ground is? Is that why we're talking
Yes.
about what sport it is? Because we're in green acres and we can't pave, or it needs to
No,
remain
you can
permeable?
But as the wall was originally designed by their architectural and engineering firm, it had a turf surface. And Rich was able to save, I think it was like $20,000
Yeah.
by going to a stone dust surface. So I don't play tennis, so I don't know, what sports can use it depending upon the surface. But
I think we need to look at that. The stone dust alternative was for lacrosse-based wall. If you're gonna introduce racquetball or tennis, I think you're gonna need some more of a hardscape.
Well,
You know,
yeah, so just to more broadly answer the question, the wall itself is concrete, so anything that you could appropriately use against concrete, it would be accessible to that sport. So we've talked about soccer, pickleball, tennis. The rec director, DJ Berkovich, said he used to do baseball drills off the concrete wall at Community Center Field, lacrosse, so any number of sports, soccer, field hockey, that would access an individual bouncing off of the wall. The group that raised these funds happened to be lacrosse players, and the funds were raised in memory of a friend who had passed away on the lacrosse team, and so a lot of their fundraising was based off of that, and this is what they did in the face of tragedy. And they really wanted to have this installation in Fairhaven Field. So did that answer your questions, Mr. Fernandez?
It answers it. I mean, actually, I'm still not clear because I guess you guys are still deciding if it's a lacrosse wall or a multi-purpose wall. And like you said, I know Councilwoman Koch said that you can call it a multi-purpose wall only if you can use it on both sides for two different sports. But then you said that you could use the same wall for different sports, and which is true. You can use the concrete and like the current wall. And the reason I bring it up is because we don't know what's going to happen to the current wall. And since we have an opportunity here to be able to do something that's more accessible to more than just one sport, and you're still talking about putting out a bid for it, why not make it a truly multi-purpose wall?
Yeah, so I can, yeah, thank you for those questions. So to answer your question, I don't think there would ever be an intention to limit it as a lacrosse only designated wall. I think it would be accessible to any and every sport or player who wanted to use it. I mean, kids might play wall ball on it. I don't even know what wall ball is, but
Sure.
they might do. As for can you play multiple sports on it at once, I think it's more of how many individual people can use it at once. I mean, everybody's kind of doing the same activity, whatever it is, throwing, kicking, using a lacrosse stick to bounce the ball off the wall and bring it back. How many people wide can you fit? I mean, I know, at least my husband coaches lacrosse. He says that if he were running a practice there, he might have that as a drill station. He said 2 kids over there. Whether we could make it two-sided, well, certainly that would increase the cost, which has been one of the factors holding us up for the past 9 months on continuing to advance this. And then the other comment on that would be, if we are to make it two-sided, we would need to look at the location, because the location that is proposed for it kind of, if you're in Fairhaven Field and you've got the tennis courts on your left, and you've got Ridge Road on your right, and you're going right down that tiny little hill there, as if you're gonna go into the furthest east court. There's an area there that's not used all that well before you get to that trail, or the stone dust trail that we were looking at to place it. So, if we wanted to make it two-sided, we would probably need to look at a new location.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of work to do, and to bring back a viable recommendation based on donations and orientation.
Yes, and the only thing that I would add, and the reason I raised this was because, again, the rec committee was looking to have an understanding about that money. I understand we don't have that tonight. This group has been very patient. I think we're going on 3 years of them trying to continue to pursue this. My concern is that they are going to explore other opportunities, and it would, in my view, personal view, it would be such a loss to the community to see a project go away when it's pretty significantly funded. And I think it would be useful to our community, so.
Okay. Any other good of the borough, Joe?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
I had written down that I wanted to thank Joe Mullen, who was instrumental in many practice sessions with myself to get this Zoom. Alan, I want to thank RFH because they letting us borrow it just to see how it goes before we make such a purchase, because it is an investment. So thank you.
thank you, Allison. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Paige.
Virtual meetings going forward.
Yeah, I just want to make a final comment on that as well, which is, thanks to the public for bearing with us. I think Facebook Live was, ran its course, didn't do as well as I think this will do going forward. There's things we learned even tonight, when we adjourned, Allison and I spoke of it. Maybe we can Ethernet the owl into a hardwire so we don't lose connection, and we could just make this more stable, make it more reliable. And we're gonna try this again going forward. I think it was an improvement, and it helps with getting community involvement, community focus, and getting people to engage. And that, I think, everyone around here is, I'm seeing a lot of head nods everywhere. So just thank you for your patience with us while we adapt to this new technology. So with that, motion to close.
Go to executive session.
We are, yes, we are going into executive session. We will not be taking action. Thank you.